Howdy, howdy. Welcome back to my tiny corner of the internet. So, we're going to kick off another Wage Rage Radio today. It's a little bit early in the morning. Hopefully not too terribly early for you guys. It's actually not the earliest, but, you know, I kind of want to basically do a call-in approach when it comes to Wage Rage Radio. But we got a lot of fun things to talk about this go-round. Let's see who joins on in. But the fun thing is that I have noticed that a lot of people are now basically, they're moving over to the economic left side of the aisle. Like Trump's, I don't know whoever it was, whatever spokesperson was talking about how there's the rise of these little mom Donnies popping up everywhere, okay? So economic leftism is certainly on the rise because, you know, after years of like unaffordable housing, the cost of living skyrocketing. What's up, dude? Welcome to the chat. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, we're going to do a call-in approach based on, if anybody wants to come and chat, I'll just join the Wage Rage Radio Discord server. Just pull you into the 1v1 because that'll be easier, you know, to basically pull you in on the shows because it got too crowded on the stage last time. But, you know, people have been complaining about Little Mom Donnies. Yeah, dude, we're bringing back Wage Rage Radio. We're going to be doing more Wage Rage. But the funny part is they're complaining about Little Mom Donnies popping up everywhere. And the thing is that, like, I've said this for years. This was an inevitability. Trump was on stage talking about, like, you know, he could be the best communist ever or whatever, right? You know, everybody saw that. There's a video coming out on that. And the funny part is he made the point that anybody could be a communist by just promising free shit. And he's not necessarily wrong about that, okay? Anybody can promise free shit when it comes to, you know, the cost of living crisis, right? You know, because the thing is, one of the big talking points, I always go to Maduro, is like a prime example of somebody who's going to promise infinite stuff, like print infinite money, and then it doesn't actually make anybody's lives better, okay? Is because the fact is it's not a substitute for real wealth. Like, those criticisms from the right are still valid, is because the fact is here's the thing, I do have a video coming out in the future called, like, the difference between a demagogue and a statesman, okay? A demagogue is just going to give people what they want. Everybody would like infinite candy, free houses, and not have to work at all, right? We'd all love that, okay? But the thing is that that's not a reality. That's not a possibility. So the thing is that, like, you know, because we have to contend with the fact that all of us have to work for a living is because the fact is there's no such thing as a free lunch. And that's not a capitalist principle. That's a physics principle. That's the second law of thermodynamics, right? You know, you have degrading forms of energy, and that's a scarce resource that, you know, beings have to compete for to actually, you know, persist their existence in life, you know? So the thing is, there's a kernel of truth in that. Because I've noticed that, you know, with the rise of economic leftism, because a lot of people on the right are now looking at, like, economic left policies and taking it a little more seriously. Like, the mainstream left can actually see that. And to be quite honest, I've had a couple of, like, you know, mainstream leftists who basically never would have taken myself seriously, none of us seriously, about talking about the cost of living crisis. I shit you not, in my latest community post, there was a guy going in my comment section, you know, when I first started out this channel, it was really growing talking about the cost of living crisis. You know, he was downplaying the talking points on the channel, but now the fact is that he notices that, like, a lot of people are talking about the cost of living crisis. Now that he wants a piece of that action, he wants to basically reach out to people and try to change, like, people's minds on the political right side of the aisle, right? So be skeptical of the political left that are basically trying to garner your attention, is because a lot of the times it's like, you know, they still don't want to address the core issues. I mean, these people, I will tell you the truth right off the bat, why I keep the left at a particular distance, and they do get a little bit pissed off at that one, is because the fact is, when I did talk to them years about the rising cost of living crisis, the housing crisis, right? You know, the most common vocabulary word within the left's dialect when it came to talking about the cost of living crisis was Treatler-right or global 1%. Don't get too cozy up with the mainstream left, because a lot of the people who walked away from the mainstream left because they got disenchanted by their hypocrisy and retardation, it was a valid reason to just ignore the left, is because the fact is that, like, you know, they're only going to follow something if it's popular. They're never going to take it seriously if it's not popular in the first place. And the only reason they're semi-taking the ideas of this channel seriously is because the fact is now people are coming together on the common grievance. Oh yeah, they're retarded. What's up, man? So take them with a grain of salt, is because the fact is they're just basically trying to garner your attention, but they don't want to actually talk about the substantive things that we actually go through, that we want to talk about. They ignore the real problems until they gain something from addressing them. Absolutely. It's like, you know, the people, like, I still remember when I made, like, you know, that video talking about Sargon of Akkad and people going economic leftists, because Sargon of Akkad didn't really believe the idea that people would come together on the basis of an economic alliance, because the fact is the cost of housing has gotten expensive. And there were leftists in that comment section basically saying, well, you know, you first world privileged, first world workers, you know, all you talk about is the cost of living crisis. There's far more important things to talk about besides the cost of living crisis. You know, and then he goes down on the standard, you know, spiel about how the fact is that we need to care about, like, you know, other countries' workers, which no beef against other countries. But the thing is that, like, we're talking about, like, the cost of living crisis. Like, these people literally, like, sideswipe anything we talk about it to fill it with their own talking points. And that's why I say you got to hold the left with, like, a degree of skepticism and not necessarily cozy up with them too much. It's because the fact is they will just straight up ignore your issues. You'll learn that from experience. If you've been, I've been around the corner dealing with the political left, because 3 years ago when I created this channel, I wanted to talk about the cost of living crisis. And I was always told that the left was the working class side of the aisle, that they were the pro-working class side of the aisle. They cared about the cost of living crisis. So de facto, I went to those people to talk about the cost of living crisis. And then I realized they actually don't care about working class people. I know it's kind of like a revelation. You guys probably already know that. What's up, my man? That you already know that. The fact is the left, you know, only superficially cares about the working class, but I got to live that and learn that. And I went to the left to talk about the cost of living crisis. And then I realized the entire language, and you can see my older shorts videos, was them basically saying that, you know, you're a treatlerite because you live in a first world country. Think about the starving children in Africa that are having their balls chewed off by a tiger or some stuff like that. And that's why we need not talk about the cost of living crisis here in the West or the United States. The left is a label feed that was supplicated by evil people, contrary to what some people believe. Beliefs and ideology are a two-way street. They always have been. And the thing is that when it comes to, like, you know, political movements or basically forming organizations, they're built on common values and common interests, right? The only reason we're all here talking about these particular things is because, you know, it affects us. It's within our interest to talk about these things. You know, we're all going to have, like, differences, but people form coalitions and alliances, you know, based on these things. And because of the over-socialized nature of the left, they just automatically assume that there's unions and coalitions where there are none. They're like, you know, we can't do this. We got to do that. We got to do this. It's like, I had a guy, Russian communist, whatever, come into my comment section, right? I don't hide the fact that I'm an economic leftist on this channel. I talk about the cost of living crisis, how it's becoming, you know, much harder to actually afford a home and stuff like that. These people would not have listened to us, you know, if it weren't for more people, like, coming out to it. And even when they do listen to us, they don't want to take us too terribly seriously. We're on our own. Okay, if you're a part of the Western working class, you are on your own when it comes to the cost of living crisis. When it comes to economic leftism, like, the third world doesn't care about you. In fact, you know, when it comes to the ruling class, they openly admit. It's always funny, because I remember seeing that meme, like, a while ago, where it shows, like, a rich person saying, you know, beware of foreign workers. They're here to steal your cookie. That little stupid cookie meme that leftists like to talk about, like how they say it's like, you know, capitalists actually don't want infinite immigrant labor. It's funny that they always use that as a sticking point, but if you actually, what actually happens is the capitalist basically tells the American workers, if you don't trace your replacement, we're going to cut your severance package. And that's how it really goes when it comes to, you know, that meme. It's amazing, like, how they have, like, such a daft perspective on you know, American working class issues or Western working class issues. So just beware of those stupid ass kind of leftists, is because the fact is they still really don't care about you. It's ironic that the DSA talks about, like, oh, the wealthy don't care about you. And then the left, basically, if you talk about any substantive, like, class issues with the mainstream left, you'll realize in practice that they don't care about you either. It is amazingly ironic. And, you know, there's probably going to be a handful of leftists in my comment section. They're going to cope about this. But I urge you, talk to them and talk about the average house price. Talk about the unaffordability of things. Grocery prices skyrocketing. And you will come to the same conclusion that I have in time. You know? So, ever since FDR, the left doubled up on social issues and went more and more on Darwinist on economics. Yeah, because, you know, the actual economic left got neutered in this country to such a degree that it basically has no relevance in American politics. Did you hear about the bill that proposes $25 an hour minimum wage? Here's the thing about the minimum wage thing, okay? Because the thing is unironically, income should pace with inflation. The problem is it still doesn't address the fact as to why, like, American industry is not competitive and why American labor is not competitive. And, you know, the funny part is because when I was making those community posts talking about Mob Donnie doing the rent control stuff, a lot of people were saying, rent control doesn't work. And to some degree, he's partially right, is because the fact is it doesn't address the housing issue. Because the fact is you need to actually, you know, build more houses to basically reduce the cost of housing, you know? So that's the real solution when it comes to that. Like, I'm not going to oppose the minimum wage bill, but the thing is that it's a temp fix to, like, a real issue. The fact is everything's more expensive because you have rent-seeking parasites making everything expensive at every stage. So there's partially some kernel of truth, but the thing is the people who oppose the minimum wage literally just don't want to end up, like, paying the higher costs while they're also jacking up prices at the same time, right? So I'm not defending the people I'm not defending the idiot corporations that are upset that they're going to have to pay people a living wage. Someone out there has it worse than you, so don't complain about your experience as gaslighting and abusive behavior. They do that to all of us on a civilizational scale, telling us that, you know, it's an individual thing, is that we're somehow, all of us, every single one of you are defective individuals. I even had the HR department do it to me about a month ago at my workplace. It's like, but the thing is, you'll notice that common pattern. You watch Deconstructing Narcissism, you watch anybody else, you watch anybody else talk about, they'll say the exact same thing, okay? And the only difference that I'm doing here is basically sharing that experience so everybody knows that they're not alone in that affair. Why pretend immigration is a problem? Humans should have freedom of movement. Money itself is unnecessary. I disagree with that, both of those takes, okay? You know, countries exist, nations exist, and unironically, the United States, there has never been like a period where there has been as much ethnic tension as there is right now. Second of all, money, it does 100% does have a reason to exist. The fact is that, like, if somebody has to work for something for a living, it's not free. If somebody has to actually expend human labor making something, it's not free, okay? And so you need a way of compensating people. And I don't necessarily support, like, you know, the existing monetary system that's a fiat currency. But the thing is let's not pretend the fact is that, like, you know, things are absolutely free. And that's the one thing I want to maintain on this channel, is because the fact is, even though I consider myself on the economic left, I've already noticed a fair amount of mainstream leftists try to come on this channel, trying to recycle the same talking points that didn't work for the last 10 years. And I'm not here to actually repeat those talking points. Money will likely still exist. Maybe not a fiat currency, but some form of money will still exist in societies, because if somebody has to work to make it, it's not free. That's just a fact of life, is because all of us have to work to some degree to reproduce our own material existence in life and society. And the more you pretend that's not the case, unironically, some societies will end up in a form of slavery, is because they're just passing the cost to somebody, is because it's something that needs to be done. It is unnatural for citizens who are born natively in their own nation to start thinking that it's better off when they leave their country. Absolutely. And so, you know, that's something that needs to change automatically. Can we talk about Bernie Sanders proposing an American AI sovereign wealth fund being controversial right now? I think it's a stupid way of doing things, because the fact is, like, you know, you start trying to make American stake into whatever it's called, AI. It's like they're just going to use you as, like, the exit liquidity for their companies and then fuck off. Like, I don't see, AI is gonna pop in a little bit, and I don't really trust the idea of, like, oh, all of a sudden we want to socialize everything by buying out these companies right as, like, the bubble is about to burst. So I don't buy that one. I don't know if that's I think that's more Bernie Sanders having, like, an ignorance on that matter. The lefted politician steals my cookie and gives it to the foreigner. Yeah, that's accurate. Hello, guys. Hope everyone's doing okay. Capitalism, money is out of date, and the true partially. I don't necessarily disagree. There are some things that can be changed when it comes to the monetary system, but there's a lot more at play than just that. What's up, Cat Sir? I've seen your comments. I know you want me to do an interview with Basecamp, and I wouldn't be opposed to doing that. I talk to anybody. My parents just tell me to pull myself up by my bootstraps. So you're going to see the rise of more Mom Donnie type figures in the future. Like, this is an inevitability. You're going to see more of those people coming up, is because the fact is that, like, you know, I've got another video coming out here soon. I know I've been delaying making videos. I also haven't been streaming as often, but, you know, I'm the most inconsistent poster on this channel, on this platform in general. But, you know, you'll have to forgive me for that one. But, you know, people can feel the taste, people can taste the change in the air. It's basically pretty much there. But the thing is that people are not aware of how to actually do it. So basically, you have the idiot mainstream leftists who are proposing the same talking points that don't work, that never work. It's like, you know, let's just give infinite welfare, let's print infinite money. They have no, like, rational thought on how to organize things effectively. And so the fact is, they're just full of Maduro, right? And then you also have the rightists who are basically prescribing the, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you're just lazy, you're just a lazy individual, right? And so I'd rather just propose an alternative solution. I'd rather come up with an alternative solution to actually fix these things than to necessarily fall into those two camps, because I've noticed it. The funny part is the people who never really listened to our ideas in the first place, that are different enough, you know, are all of a sudden getting upset that we're gaining some kind of traction, which, you know, fine, whatever. You're going to get people who are just going to be haters no matter what. That's the case with anybody. But nonetheless, it is kind of ironic. The fact is that, like, you know, now that we're talking about economic leftism and people are talking about class issues, you know, once again, they're going to just try and, you know, take over the conversation. It's like those dumb shit MRAs, right? You know, they tried to basically change the narrative, go to a completely different talking point when they know what we primarily talk about, what our main talking points are, completely ignore it and sideswipe it and try and reframe the entire discussion. But that's quite common in politics. People will quite literally do that, is because the fact is they want to basically push their own stuff rather than just talk about it honestly. It's kind of pathetic more than anything. I'm trying to figure out how I can get out of this cave. I found that one exit, which I'll probably just build like a spire and just go up. But, yeah. No, it's going to be an interesting time. I can't complain about it because people are going to become more aware of it. I'm just more interested in how this is going to politically manifest. You know. Let's see if we can get out of this cave through the side. I'm just gonna dig up this way and see if I can find my original camp. So, what do you think of the rent freeze in New York? I think it's good videos because I'm in Pennsylvania and notice rent follows the way in New York. Yeah, I'm not against the rent freeze. I'm really not going to oppose it, is because the fact is, for something like New York, it's like, you know, they know it's a high demand area, and they're going to basically just engage in endless rent seeking. So, really, the tough thing is, like, as much as I say build new houses, like, if somebody wants to propose a non-capitalist solution, or a capitalist solution to it, just build more houses. But because you have New York City and it's already really densely populated, there's really not a way to do it. So rent freezing might actually be good in New York City. So we need to bring back third positionism. It's already here. Third positionism is more popular than it's ever been, and the left just kind of refuses to accept that. I mean, under accepted reality, you're right, immigration does hurt poor Americans. I mean, yeah, it's used to basically undercut domestic labor. It's one thing that people don't like to admit, is because the fact is, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of racists out there that will probably just use that immigrants as an excuse and never blame the capitalists who are basically importing like a bunch of, you know, immigrant labor to engage in wage suppression. That's the only thing I get irritated with the right about, is because they won't acknowledge that. Okay, I guess I'll just have to build a new base. I don't remember playing this one. It's been a little while since I played this map. But, you know, what's it called? I was coming across a right-wing meme fairly recently. I don't know, I had to put it on screen or whatever, right? But to the effect, it was from a libertarian channel. And the post went along this line, okay? It said, you know, the reason I'm poor is because rich people exist. And on the bottom panel, it had, the reason my car is slow is because, you know, because Ferraris exist, right? You know, the logic of the argument is this, okay? You know, somebody being independently wealthy has no bearing on your existence and doesn't make you poor. It's because somebody being a billionaire in a mansion, in principle, shouldn't affect your chances at having a decent life or having a decent shot at prosperity. That was the logic of the meme. And I've said multiple times on this channel that when it comes to, you know, rich people, I've said it multiple times. I already said that I'm not a collectivist. I'm more of an individualist and probably adjacent. You know, I used to be a right-wing libertarian myself. Is that, like, I've never considered somebody being independently wealthy to be, like, a threat to my existence, right? You know, the logic is obviously encoded in that meme, okay? Now, we all know that's not true. Okay, we all know that's false. It's because the fact is it's ironic that, you know, they post a meme saying that, you know, somebody is independently, you know, wealthy has no bearing on your life. If that was true, I would still be a right-wing libertarian. But the problem is, we all know that's not true. When it comes to the wealthy, unironically, you know, if the wealthy had just stayed in their mansions and left people alone and just made products and moved on, like, nobody would have a problem with them. But that's not what they do. They form these little secret societies so they can deal with children. They take over the state to basically pass laws that, you know, benefit them at the expense of everybody else. In Canada, you know, they're using taxpayer dollars to prop up the condo market, is because the fact is they're trying to, you know, preserve their asset prices, okay? And so, you know, when I looked at that meme and said, okay, you know, somebody being wealthy has no bearing on my existence, right? You know, somebody, you know, because somebody has a fast car doesn't make my car slow. This would have been true, you know, a while ago, but that's not true anymore. It's because the fact is the billionaire class doesn't actually, you know, withhold from actually capturing the state. They don't actually respect the rules of free market capitalism. If they did, none of you would be here. None of you would be here listening to economic leftism or even giving it a second chance, is because the fact is that the billionaire class actually engaged in fair and open competition, and they didn't try to rig the rules using the state to benefit them at every turn. Like, you know, in Canada, where they're using taxpayer dollars to prop up the property market because they want people to be poor, right? You know, if they had never done any of these things, nobody would be even considering you know, economic leftism. It's gotten so bad that even Trump has had to come out and basically tell the oil companies to stop price gouging, right? You know, that's how bad our capitalist class is because even then, it's like, you know, as soon as the Soviet Union collapsed, the capitalist class saw the opportunity to basically, they realized, okay, communism is dead. There's no threat of a working class revolt. You know, so we're just going to go back to the Gilded Age times 10. That's why you have the World Economic Forum. That's why you have rich people acting like total degenerates, like they have no consequences whatsoever, right? They've broken the social contract. And this is one thing I tell right-wing libertarians all the time, okay? You know, right-wing libertarians, you know, in principle, I don't even have a disagreement with your ideas. I like free market competition. I like open competition. I agree with meritocracy. And a lot of the things, you know, I actually agree with competition because I think it's just genuinely beneficial for civilization. People are meritocratic when it comes to choosing their doctor. Why not be meritocratic about everything else in civilization? right? But the thing is these people don't do that. I've said countless times, and it's kind of funny. It's because, like, there's this thing called the self-evidency fallacy that always gets thrown around on my channel by the opponents of this community. Is that, billionaires are rich is because they're successful and actually super intelligent or whatever, right? That's the logic of their argument, right? But the thing is that how can you even say, the reason why our elites are so unimpressive, why they're so retarded, they're the biggest rent-seeking parasites on the face of the planet, is because every single one of us, and even right-wing libertarians would agree with us on this one, is that they're not the product of a magnificent competition. They're not the product of the cream of the crop rising to the top. These people are wealthy pedophiles that capture the agents of the state. They capture the state so they could pass laws that, like, benefited them. There's no true competition in this country. These people rose to the top is because the fact is they killed competition every turn to provide or preserve their existence at the top of the hierarchy. There was no competition that led them to the top of society, and that's why our elites are so unimpressive. They're so pathetically retarded. As a consequence, is because we don't have a competition. There is no competition. The funny part is when I was a right-wing libertarian back in, like, 2008, when that crashed, when those banks started to crash, I used to argue all the time with, like, a lot of the idiot leftists that, like, if we had, like, more free and fair open competition, these companies would be allowed to fail. They would be allowed to fail, and, the bad companies would essentially be forced out. But, ever since they started declaring that companies were too big to fail, you kind of had this interbreeding among the ruling classes where the wealthy basically, have created a self-serving system that keeps them at the top of all of civilization. Is this Minecraft? No, it's Hytale. And so, thus, because there's no competition, the outcome of this supposed competition is the most intellectually deficient retards controlling all of civilization. That's why their decisions are so retarded. But here's what's being said with that. Here is my argument to every right-wing libertarian, okay? It's because a lot of them will basically say, we just need to have more competition by removing the state. But the funny part is what wealthy person is ever going to lose control of the state after they've controlled literally the monopoly on violence on everybody? So that's not the case, okay? So if we're never going to have right-wing libertarianism, we're never going to have true capitalism, and unironically, I could argue in a sort of sense that China has more free market competition than the United States. If we can never have the right-wing libertarian ideals because the capitalist class will always capture the state, they always use it to serve their own interests at the expense of all civilization, why shouldn't somebody become a Marxist? Why shouldn't somebody say, you know what, if, the capitalist class is going to use the state to be as self-serving as fucking possible, like, why shouldn't the working class be like, you know what, we're going to take the state, we're going to go full Mom Donnie, and then we're going to use the state to benefit our interests. We're passing a 3,000% tax on all billionaires just because we don't like them. Is because, let's be honest here, like, who likes Larry Fink? Who likes Larry Ellison? I want you to put a green hat in the chat if you don't like Larry Ellison and Larry Fink. Put a green hat. I'll go ahead and, like, copy and paste it from the internet. Bill Cap, emoji. Let's go ahead and get some green hats in the chat or whatever, right? Let's do that. Okay, let me open up the chat. Let's go ahead and put that green circle. I'm gonna go ahead and grab it. Okay, let's get some green hats in the chat if you don't like Larry Ellison. I already posted it there, right? So, who is actually going to, who actually likes these people that wants them to actually stay? Okay, let's get some green hats in here. I posted it in myself, right? So, who actually likes these people? Because if they're just gonna, they provide no tangible value for civilization, they rig the entire system to benefit themselves at the expense of all of civilization in the most parasitic way. They're only pro-capitalist when it benefits them, and they're pro-socialist when it benefits them, like Nancy Pelosi saying that we're a free market country when a democratic socialist asked them to ban insider trading, but then all of a sudden using the big arm of the state to crush workers from actually walking away from a bad deal during a union negotiation, right? If they're going to use the state to benefit themselves, why should I not be a Marxist and say, you know what, as a member of the working class, my goal is to seize the state and then go after the wealthy and use the state to benefit the working class. You don't even come in my comment section with the moral gaslights, right? Why should we not do that? Okay? So, if we can't have the libertarian ideal where the capitalists play fair, where they actually have free and open fair competition, what is the reason why we should not just use the state and go full on? Because that's all communism is, okay? Because, according to right-wing libertarian ideology, free market capitalism entails that anybody is free to compete. They're free to come up with their own ideas. They're free to come up with their own businesses and try everything. But then the ruling class is quite literally rigged the system where 90% of people have absolutely no free time. That includes myself. That's why I don't post or stream very often, is because if you haven't noticed, there's like a Darwinian selective effort when it comes to streaming and content creation where it favors those who are already existing and wealthy about it, right? If everybody has their free time stripped away from them, is because they're all waging away as hard as they possibly can, is because every company is designed to basically extract as much free time as you as possible. Thus, you have no competition. And more competition is nerfed by, the capitalist class using the state. Like, why should it not just be a contest of just capturing the state and using it for your own benefit? Because that's what Marxism is. Like, the entire Marxist conception of history is quite literally the conception that the state is an instrument of class rule. And so at that point, if you accept that as like the grounds, why should the working class not just seize the state, pass infinite taxes, and push out the wealthy out of civilization and seize the means of production? Let's be real here. The workers build the country anyway, cry about it. Comment makes no sense. So that's what I don't get about the, right-wing libertarians, is because the fact is the more we spend time, just quite literally talking about the, like, oh, we can have like a hypothetical world where there's no state or something like that. And, we can just basically make free and fair market competition, which I'm not even sure you're even convinced that that's a possibility in the first place. Why shouldn't it just be the other way around? I really wish, like, libertarians, like, the thing is, because I'm saying this as an ex-libertarian, basically asking, like, when can we have Alistair clocks when you make sure when farmers have no free time? Yeah, something like that. Socialize the losses and privatize the profits. The classic tale is old as time itself. So, let's get an armor bench, because I want to get that, but I don't have enough true logs. So, money doesn't make things. They pay workers to do things. So, the funny part is, now I kind of want to go on a little bit of a boomer rant, is because the fact is that you look at boomers. They grew up in the most prosperous period, and, okay, so I literally don't have enough light leather, so I need to basically build this. I want Starfleet but less militaristically. I don't even have a problem with a strong military. I actually support a strong military because the fact is the pacifists left are just kind of pathetic and retarded. They're just not going to seize power or, like, conquer anything. So you just don't need to take those people, seriously in the first place. At the end of the day, competition rules all. As much as, like, a lot of the over-socialized leftists would not like to admit it, that's something that they get deeply upset about every single time. So, people can call this channel third positionist Nazwell. I couldn't care less. These ideals are a unique synthesis exclusive to this channel, is because the fact is I know for a fact that there's a lot of people in my audience who are, that still believe in competition, meritocracy, and hard work. Because we know that's a necessity for a functional civilization, a functional society. But we don't want to go down like the infinite welfarist, like polycule retardation of the mainstream left. Is because, we recognize what actually is needed to make a functional civilization, but we also recognize, like, who is actually bringing it down. Fun fact, cult leader Jim Jones uses followers to astroturf an entire political campaign for the Democrats in San Francisco. I heard about that, yeah. I wish I knew more about it, because I need to actually study that a little bit more. But here's another fun one, because, as, economic leftism kind of grows, you will notice that, there's going to be a significant increase in kind of like a, I wouldn't say leftist intellectualism or whatever, right? Is because they're not actually that intelligent. They're just a bunch of bookworms. And they just basically throw endless, book terms at you and try to basically police what you're allowed to talk about within some political framework to kind of police your discussion in general. And it's the most obnoxious shit. If you've ever dealt with, like, the mainstream left, you'll understand what I'm coming to talk about right here and right now. Is there any rich person who was born poor? They're incredibly rare. So for a rich person to be born poor, the thing is that, like, there are a handful of people that unironically started out from the, like, actually poor, but they're far and few in between. They're not that common. I'm going to get iron armor because I would like that. Let's go ahead and, okay, that's still cooking. I need to go back in the caves to get some more leather. But, they're far and few in between, is because the fact is most self-made billionaires started out with some level of success. Like, you could go from middle class to wealthy, and that's possible, or you could go from poor to middle class. Like, my family, started out poor, but got into the middle class by, like, the skin of their teeth. The thing is going from a direct poor to, like, you know, upper class transition is incredibly rare. It's very difficult to go from rags to riches. It's not very common. That's like, if you look at Jeff Bezos and a lot of the billionaires, like even Elon Musk, like they had some level of wealth well before they got into it. So Jeff Bezos was actually in a high-ranking role in IBM before he started Amazon. He didn't start rags to riches. And so, you know, the whole rags to riches is a mythology that doesn't really exist. I still remember, like, you know, back when I was a kid, used to believing that stuff, that it was the thing. Which, you know, funny part is that, like, if rich people didn't play that game, and like boomers, for instance, right? They'll act like they had a tough time growing up or whatever. And we all know that they didn't, is because the fact is they grew up in the Pax Americana, the greatest time in American civilization, right? And the funny part is I don't even have a problem with that. It's like, you know, I have a couple like boomer haters in my comment section that get mad at me for talking about boomers and the cost of living crisis. They tried to, you know, they try to play the games like exposing me for my supposed moral hypocrisy for wanting the average American to own their own home, right? But what I hate about boomers is that instead of admitting that they had it good in their time and they had it decent, you know, instead they like to prop up a stupid narrative about some, you know, legacy of struggle and sacrifice that led them to their wealth in the first place, rather than just being born lucky. And that's what I hate the most, is because then they use that narrative to gaslight you and I, that we're just individually lazy and we didn't work hard for our you know, anything that we done. Like, we don't like deserve anything, right? You know, they will literally gaslight us, pretend that they had it tough when we all know they didn't. They lived through the Pax Americana, and then basically kick the ladder on us. Like, we all know the logic of the boomer, okay? I mean, the funny part is you can see my ankle biters in my comment section, my community posts. They show up even in my videos. It's that same kind of mentality. So the funny part is, you guys remember the medical physics girl, the girl who was going viral on the internet because she had a master's degree in medical physics and she had to do a cleaning job. It was kind of sad and depressing and stuff like that. She looked like a nice person, but there was no shortage of boomers in the comment section calling that woman an elitist. She was an evil elitist because, you know, she believed, she was talking about, I was like, well, shouldn't I be rewarded for all my hard work? Shouldn't I have like some ROI for doing something as difficult as medical physics? You know, and all the boomer in the comment section were coming out from the, like, roaches from their woodworks, from their fully paid off houses, to lecture this woman about how she's an evil elitist for demanding a livable wage for all the hard work she put into studying something as difficult as medical physics. And, you know, that is the mentality of the boomer that I can't stand the most, is because the fact is, while everybody, all of us, literally can barely afford our own houses right now, living paycheck to paycheck, they will gaslight us from their fully paid off houses when they could afford these houses off of single incomes working a factory job to provide for a house, a family, and a car, you know, and lecture us about how we're lazy and evil elitists. And so the funny part is that, like, there was one person that came in my comment section when I made that talking point in one of my videos, named J8009 or whatever, right? You know, resident ankle boomer, thought I was a moral hypocrite to point out that me and my wife own a home. And I have always point out the critical part. The only reason I have a home is because my wife works. You know, and it always gets lost into the details conveniently with these types of people. You know, I decided to ask the person, you know, hey, I got a question, you know, my favorite boomer friend, like, what do you think me and my wife deserve? Like, what do we deserve, you know, based on, like, our background? I'm a full-time engineer. My wife works in healthcare. We're both full-time workers. What do we deserve? Do we deserve a small house? Do we deserve a big house? You know, where do we land on the hierarchy? We stayed away from drugs, worked hard, went to college, you know, we worked honestly. What do we deserve? Okay. And the answer will shock you. And then maybe you should put some green hats in the chat after that one. I like that. But, you know, the answer will shock you. Is because when I asked him that, I was like, okay, what do we deserve, J809? Like, based on your metrics? Because obviously, you have a preconceived notion that myself, that woman who had the medical physics degree, you know, that we think we're worth more than we actually are. So I want to ask you, you know, what do you think we deserve based on our background, our credential, and stuff like that? And the tacit answer from J809 was pretty much what I expected. Well, not really, okay? He basically didn't really answer the question. He basically said, well, you deserve what you deserve. Gave the most non-committal, non-answers, because the fact is, we all know what he's thinking deep down. We all know why. What he actually thinks of us and our generation when we talk about the things that we do. You know what boomers believe we deserve? All of you deserve? You know, everybody in my audience who's come here to talk about the cost of living crisis, the wage rage or whatever, and say TPD and put Luigi hats in my comment section. This is what boomers believe that you and I and everybody deserves. You know, what they think that medical physics girl deserves, what they think that me as a full-time engineer deserves, what my wife deserves, what you guys deserve. They believe we deserve nothing. They believe we deserve absolutely nothing for all our hard work. They believe that we're a whiny, spoiled, entitled generation that deserves nothing. Even though the fact is they grew up in the Pax Americana, the best time it was to be an American. And, So, you know, they grew up in the arguably the best time in American history. And unironically, they believe that we deserve nothing. Never has there been a generation that's been given so much, yet gave so little to their children. The silent generation, the greatest generation. They quite literally went through, you know, World War I, Spanish flu, Great Depression, and World War II. And, you know, they literally went out of their way to ensure that their children had the best material standard of living that they possibly could have. It's because, you know, they had went through so much. And, you know, they wanted to make sure that their children had a decent standard of living. And they did. The baby boomers did get that. The baby boomers had the best time to be an American citizen. And, you know, what did they do? Did they reciprocate it forward? Did they push it forward? Did they give it to the next generation? Say, like, okay, you know, I would have been fine if it was like maybe half of the standard of living that they had. You know what? I'm fine with that. Maybe go back to a 2010s or a 2000 standard of living with that average house price. And I probably wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking about these things on YouTube. Neither would you guys be watching me. It's because, let's be honest here, if like the cost of living was actually normal and fixed and we had pre-COVID prices, I think most of you guys would probably still be on the political right. You'd still be a part of MAGA. You would still be on that side of the aisle. But you're not. So, you know, but this generation believes that we deserve nothing. And it's ironic. It's because the fact is, you want to talk about the most spoiled and entitled generation on the face of the planet. While they call us all spoiled whiners for talking about the cost of living crisis, they're unironically living proof of a generation of what happens when you give somebody too much. When you give somebody too much. It's ironic, is because then they project that mentality on us. Because while they basically call us an entitled for just wanting the bare minimum, the bare necessity. Because look at all the right-wing memes. What are all the right-wing memes? They're all romanticizing about returning to a 1950s standard of living, even if it's all bet from like a race perspective, right? You know, it's all about returning to a standard of living that was normal. And the thing is, they can't even tacitly admit that, and they're surprised that people are going economically left. I'd still be a libtard. That's totally fair. I'd probably still be a right-wing libertarian. The boomers spat on their own soldiers while they returned from Vietnam. Always chuckle when boomers try to lecture people on being patriotic. They're patriotic for their profits. That's all they're patriotic for in their 401ks. It's like when the Canadian government is quite literally... What's it called? Oh, I'm out of line and strips. I need to kill more enemies. It's like when they're patriotic for, like, Ford. They'll demand you to be patriotic for Ford, a failing company that will then turn around and hire infinite Indians to basically replace your labor. Like, it's amazing how they demand patriotism, for themselves at the expense of everybody else. Like, they're not patriotic when it comes to hiring American workers. They're only patriotic when it comes to their profits. And then all of a sudden, everybody has to be patriotic. That's what I love about, like, boomer nationalism. Because boomer nationalism is essentially being patriotic for the profits of American companies. It's ironic is that, like, Ford was getting mad at BYD. See, here's the thing, okay? I've noticed there's a couple of leftist, guys that come into my comment section. Meritocracy and competition don't necessarily exist. I'm still pro-meritocracy and pro-competition. See, the funny part is, yeah, I can talk about the bankers. But the thing is, I'm still pro-meritocracy and pro-competition is because the fact is, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. You can call yourself a capitalist, communist, or whatever, right? Is that if you don't respect meritocracy and competition, you will lose, okay? And American companies are learning that the hard way is because the fact is they're so used to the mentality of the house always wins. The rich pedophiles will always win. The can-dos, always coming in my comment section saying, like, the rich pedophiles are inevitable and that we can do nothing about it. Is that, when you have a group that doesn't respect competition or meritocracy, not every other group is going to respect that. And so that's the reason why Ford is having a bad day. The funny part is, like, they're trying to preserve, the American market. That's why they banned BYD and Chinese vehicles from coming into the United States. But they can't ban them from entering markets in Europe, is because the fact is, at the end of the day, it's like, what interest do the Europeans have to maintain American brands which are overpriced and expensive and work half the functionality as the Chinese, right? Okay? So the thing is that, like, on a global market, American brands are going to lose. Now I'm going to get rid of this guy. This guy's going to, like, cause a bunch of problems. So, competition and meritocracy rules all. Even if, like, some leftists are trying to take advantage of the economic leftism, I'm still pro-meritocracy and pro-competition. But because that's just a fact of life, okay? If you, societies that respect meritocracy and competition will always dominate those that don't. And China's basically becoming a perfect example of that, is because the ironic part is that the billionaire class in the United States is anti-meritocracy and anti-competition while claiming that they're pro-meritocracy and pro-competition. And so, you know, ironically enough, them capturing these things to be as self-serving as possible through the state to neuter competition by any means possible is going to bite the United States in the ass, and it kind of already is. Let's go ahead and make a helmet. I need that. I can make some boots. So, you know, either respect competition or get dominated by it. It's just that fact of life. Austrian Painter was onto something. Fair. This is a Marxist channel, but yeah, they lied about Mustache Man. No, they did lie about Mustache Man too. Hopefully I don't get yeeted and deleted off the internet for that one. So, you got to give credit where credit's due. Like, you can disagree with somebody, and this is something the left is just not capable of doing, okay? And this is one of the reasons why I just don't actually give much of a, you know, a bone to the left, is because the fact that I know how they think. Is that, like, you know, you could say something entirely right to the left. But the thing is because you said it in a mean way, they won't listen to you. And so, you know, at one point or another, you just stop caring about trying to talk to them. Is because the fact is, you can build a base that can have an honest discussion about things, you know, with people who respect ideas over, you know, sensibilities. You can't build a base on people who are always making you step on eggshells to police, like, whatever you have to say. And so, you know, eventually you just stop caring what they think and you just kind of go your own way. You know, it's kind of like this, you know, it's kind of like normies. Normies, you know, this is the mentality of the normie. This is the mentality of the over-socialized midwit, okay? You know, they originally hated the party that they, how should I say it? Because it's a funny way how I should describe it, is because the fact is normies are all this mentality. They ruin every fan base in this particular way, right? They originally hated what then they took over, and then they basically pretend they invented it. You know, normies will originally hate a party, then when they join it after the fact it's gotten popular, they'll then act like they invented the whole thing and push out the original crowd. Is because really it kind of goes to show that, like, there's always been a minority that's led things, and then, you know, the normie just kind of follows along. Alistair, why should anyone who works be unhoused? Being unhoused is different than owning a home. Who's making that argument? You know, if you're going to straw man this community with that talking point, you're not going to get very far, Luminosities, because, like, nobody's making that argument. So, but still, you know, that's just the nature of the normie. That's the nature of the over-socialized midwit. They hated what they originally took over and then pretend that they started. And that's why you said, like, when it comes to over-socialized midwits, just ignore them. Because, like, they're not going to contribute an ounce of value. They always show up after the fact to basically take over what they originally hated. You know, it's like what we're talking about now. It's like now the fact is that we're starting, like, you know, economic leftist talking points are popular now on the right. They're trying to take it over and basically, you know, monopolize it so they can dictate the terms and conditions of the conversation. None of this is new, by the way. It's not a straw man to you, but the boomers. Fair. Okay, I don't want to straw man you. I don't like straw manning people in my chat. I try to make it a fair discussion, so I didn't mean to straw man you. Okay. So why should anyone who works in house? Yeah, absolutely. We should. The funny part is, like, 70% of houses sitting empty right now are quite literally because of, I need to get some food or I'm going to basically die. It's quite literally because of boomers and their 90 Airbnb rentals. So BlackRock has been doing a propaganda campaign to save its image to some degree by saying, like, BlackRock doesn't own homes or whatever, right? You know, because they're a private equity firm or whatever. Which, you know, to their credit, they don't own homes. It's Blackstone. But they've been trying to do a massive PR reversal with people owning homes, including Blackstone, by pointing out that institutional investors only own 500,000 homes in this country, you know, compared to boomers who own like 3 to 9 properties. Fun fact, 80% of properties locked up by landlords is by, you know, small mom and pop and, you know, decently installed, you know, basically boomers owning these properties. So, like, people who own between 3 to 9 properties occupy about 70% of rental properties, 72% to be exact. And then on top of that, you know, the other 10% on top of that, which leads it up to, you know, 82%, you know, are people who own about anywhere between, like, you know, 10 to 100 properties, okay? And that makes up about, like, 4 million homes. So, you know, it's not necessarily, the institutional investor is awful, but they only make up 5% of, like, the bitten up housing supply, which is kind of an interesting one, is because BlackRock has been deeply trying to basically overturn their PR in that regard. Whether they do it successfully, I couldn't care less, because I don't really care about their PRs, because that's their problem, not ours. When will we see communist America? That's going to be an interesting one, because the thing is that I personally think that if a communist party rose today in the United States, it would probably have to be something that, you know, integrates market competition into the planned economy, much like China does, to basically ensure that, like, you know, quality value is actually produced on the behalf of civilization, not just used for infinite rent seeking. That's what a communist party would have to look like in the United States, because anything else that tries to follow in the traditional, like, you know, leftist retardation, it's like, it's not going to go very far. It's going to go in the direction of basically trying to create the USSR 2.0, and it's just not going to succeed. There's a reason that stuff, you know, collapsed, which is why I don't necessarily take it too terribly seriously. Let's get some boots on this one, so I can have good armor protection. WASP are okay with universal healthcare. Yeah, I could believe that. Most people are going economically left just because of the cost of living crisis, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So, fun fact, I got another side rant that I got to give you guys, okay? So, let's talk about why you can uninstall like 90% of the apps on your phone right now. I'm going to go on a bit of a side rant on this one, is because this is a bit autistic. I know, we've been talking about the cost of living crisis and Wage Rage Radio the entire time, right? But let me make a sales pitch to you. Okay, so, you know, I don't hide the fact that I use AI. I use ChatGPT. I've used Claude. I don't really use Claude that much these days because it's not that much different. It's not that much better. But, you know, I was using the mobile app for ChatGPT, and I was, you know, obviously I was being autistic. You guys can make fun of me in the chat for this one, but I was basically screwing around with, like, the logic of a high-speed, like, you know, transit system, and I posted some of that in my server about, like, you know, so fun fact, there is a trade-off between if you're going to design, like, a length of road, whether it be, like, you know, a rail, high-speed rail, car, whatever, right? There's a fun fact trade-off between distance and also stop points, okay? So the max speed you can achieve, okay? Because you got to consider this way. Consider a railroad that has a distance D, okay? And, you know, there's a maximum amount of acceleration the human body can tolerate. You can't get too terribly crazy with it, is because the fact is it's just not, you know, possible in the body, right? So acceleration is the limiting factor for any kind of public transportation system, cars, whatever, right? And so the fact is that acceleration to reach a certain velocity requires time and also distance to actually reach that max velocity, okay, right? So it's based on distance. There is a trade-off between stop points for a rail system and the max speed you can achieve. Is that all my stuff over there? Or is that another can? So there's a trade-off with that. And so whatever public transportation system you're designing is you want to basically figure out how you can minimize that trade-off. So, like, you know, you can have like a high-speed rail, but you're not going to be using a high-speed rail within a major urban center. But between urban centers, that makes sense, right? So you need a light rail system within like major urban centers to make public transportation. Maybe you need a multi-grid layer to actually do. I know this is the most autistic rant about public infrastructure I've probably done on this channel, and I might make a full video going through the math about it too, right? But, you know, and you can use a little bit of node graph theory to actually do this and formalize it and do some calculations on, like, you know, what is the worst case scenario on a, you know, transfer, or, you know, moving between locations, you know, within the city, right? Job search is going well. So, autistic rant aside, back to the ChatGPT thing, because, like, this is how you know I'm probably a little bit autistic. I'm a little bit on the spectrum, guys. But, you know, I was screwing around in ChatGPT. The mobile app was being such a pain in the ass that it would just, you know, type things incorrectly. It would be mistyping things. And eventually I got tired of the app and literally just used the mobile web browser to access ChatGPT, okay? I also do a lot of home cooking because I like to look up recipes on Pinterest to cook things, okay? I like to test out new recipes and, you know, cook them at home. The problem is that when you open up a recipe on Pinterest, the problem is it spams a gorillion fucking advertisements in your face when you're just trying to read a recipe so you can actually cook something in the kitchen, okay? That got annoying. So I uninstalled that app and I used the web browser. And Pinterest still complains about me using the app instead of the web browser. But, like, why would I use the app if it's just going to take me to a built-in web page with a gorillion fucking advertisements on Pinterest when I can use Firefox Mobile to basically install a web browser, you know, an ad blocker, and get it working then. So this is not my base. So, what's up, buddy? So why would I use the app to actually do this? And so here's the interesting autistic rant that I want to do. Okay, these guys are probably going to kill me. And I'm running this way. Need to get closer to my base. Oh, this is a base. Okay, I'm totally screwed. Yep. Right. I'm got in the middle of this battle with these guys. Oh, this guy's going to throw shit at me. I'm totally going to die. Yeah, I remember in Minecraft, being in water and also dealing with a skeleton is like the worst possible outcome, is because the fact is you can't move and you're having arrows shot at you. How fucking annoying. So, you know, when it comes to mobile applications, you know, the most annoying thing is that, like, you know, when I was using Pinterest, it's like, you know, you'd open up a recipe to cook something in the kitchen, it would spam like a gorillion fucking advertisements. It would drain your battery in like 2 minutes, is because how many advertisements is trying to fit on your screen. So eventually I just went to the web browser version of the stuff. And the funny part is the web browser version, the mobile browser version of it complains to like no end, is because the fact is it wants you to use your mobile apps, right? And so I began to realize, you know what? You don't need like 90% of mobile apps. They're literally 500 megabytes. They take up a ton of space, and they literally ship with an entire browser, is because the fact is everything's a web app nowadays. So, like, why even possibly use it? And so, you know, when I realized it, it's like, you know, number one, there's a RAM crisis going on. So the fact is that, like, you know, and also a storage crisis. Like, why use a web browser for half, or why use a mobile app for these things? Every company is trying to get you to install their stupid little mobile app. But for what reason? They all suck. You know, their mobile apps suck, they're garbage. So, like, why even have it installed on your machine? Okay, I'm gonna build a... Where is that? I need a weapons blacksmith anvil. So, that's when I realized, like, you don't need, like, 90% of the apps on your phone. They're just literally taking up space to spy on you. It was fucking garbage, to be honest. That's when I realized that. So we're gonna go back in the caves and get some more of that stuff. Okay, and let me make a chef's thing, because I need to get rid of this inventory crap. Chef, so let's go ahead and get this out of the way. But yeah, 90% of apps you can literally just uninstall because they're literally just, A, they take up storage. They're also incredibly slow, and they're just terrible. After I realized that, I was like, no, I'm uninstalling 90% of apps. And on top of that, they're also spying on you and collecting user data. Use Firefox ad blockers. Ads are insane nowadays. Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's so bad. So, like, there's no reason why you should be using the mobile app of anything if it has a web browser. So think about it this way. Okay, there's no reason to use a mobile app for anything, unless it's written in C++ and it requires, like, high-performance gaming. Like, it's a mobile game that it requires, like, you know, Vulkan, OpenGL, and C++ to actually run. And so, like, you know, at that point, it's like, okay, maybe you should have an app installation for that. Let's go get some more leather from some rats in the tunnels. So, you know, that's when I realized, it's like, you don't need, like, 90% of, like, mobile apps. Because they're just literally glorified, like, space takers that basically collect user data. So, there's no point in that. And on top of that, it's like, because I use Graphene OS, it notifies me whenever an app's trying to access play integrity, and they're trying to basically ban third-party services from, the store or whatever. They're trying to make it difficult as hell to actually use, like, outside of stuff. You know what I hate about the modern internet? Is because they're trying to basically lock you into their platforms as much as possible. Like, you know, the CEO of whatever it's called, Anthropic, Cloud's AI or whatever, right, was coming out saying, we need to ban open source models. We need to ban, you know, things like open source in general. And companies have been trying to ban this stuff for ages. Like, Google's almost been successful with the Android open source project, completely, you know, taking it over and then turning it into proprietary garbage, you know, porkyware or whatever. But, you know, how much they're trying to shove this little ecosystem down your throat, and they're not even doing it well. It's literally just designed to basically take up as much space and then, you know, collect user data. So, ads have gotten so much worse. Digging through my iPhone, I can't find shit. They make these directions so complicated. Can't find any rats down here. So, Reddit has been shitifying their web app for this very reason. Oh yeah, no, fuck Reddit, dude. Honestly, like, Reddit, like, I don't even use that crap. I can proudly say I've never made a Reddit account in my entire life, and I never will, because I hate Reddit. And so, like, yeah, Reddit's been trying to shitify, making web access, like, as difficult as possible. They're trying to go to a closed internet where you can't access anything on the internet without, like, having, you know, some kind of, like, you know, client-side, you know, software to do digital ID verification. We've gotten to that point where they're just trying to basically... Imagine going to jail for cloning a repo. Yeah, Microsoft couldn't ban open source, neither can Dario. I'm not necessarily too terribly worried about this, because it's never going to work. It's like, you know, there's like some Doom tube or Doom post or whatever saying, like, they're trying to ban open source models and stuff like that. How? I can literally go on stream, show you how to install Olama and how to start downloading, like, models that you can install on your computer and run locally. Like, how are you going to ban this stuff? Like, good luck with that, buddy. You're not going to be able to ban that. I never made a Facebook account, but Reddit caught me. I made a Facebook account 10 years ago. Watch what they did with, like, politics to shove propaganda down my throat, and I was like, nope, I'm deleting it. And I deleted my Facebook account, like, over 10 years ago. I haven't used that shit in ages. People have asked me to, like, remake Facebook. I'm like, nope, never going to. Why would you ever want that? It's like basically a giant dossier list, you know, for yourself that anybody can access and share around. It's like, why would you do that? No point. They want to make the right to repair illegal. They're banning 3D printers and open source models. Yeah, capitalists are literally a living tomb around civilization. Like, unironically, it's like, you know, the capitalist class better start asking themselves what they justify to civilization is, because the fact is, it's like, if, like, socialists like us, if we all got into government one day and we're like, you know what, we're going to take power, we're going to vote ourselves into office, and then we're going to start taxing these billionaires at 1,000% just because we don't like them. they better start thinking twice about this, is because the fact is, it's like, and they'll scream and call us all communists. They'll call us communists because the fact is they don't like the fact is communism to them is that whenever the state is used to benefit the working class, that's communism in the back of their head. Which is ironically enough, that's the entire thesis of Marxism anyways, is because the state is just an instrument of class rule. You know, it's ironic that they would call us communists, is because the fact is that, like, unironically, the way the wealthy use the state is basically how Marx said the wealthy would use the state. The state is an instrument of class rule. And so that's why he conceived of the idea of, like, the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, Marx wasn't obviously the inventor of communism. There's a whole bunch of, like, proto-socialists that existed before Marx, the utopian socialists. They were coming up with their own ideas. Marx merely just added, you know, the aspect of historical materialism to the concepts of socialism. That's all he ever did, right? But if we're going to use the state to be as self-serving as possible, like, you know, again, you know, under the Marxist conception of history, why not just use the state to benefit us ordinary people? Like what Mamdani's doing with, you know, passing free childcare. Like, you know, if we're going to play, oh, we're going to use the state to benefit us, why not just use it to benefit us, like, as the working class? Sadly, I'm still job hunting. I need to use LinkedIn since there are a lot of jobs that I don't want. So, yeah, it's a bot platform. You never know with, like, this stuff. But, like, you know, the only reason I'm not too terribly dismissing every billionaire is because there's a couple of wealthy people that are still, like, in my opinion, like, you know, okay. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily bad. It's like, you know, okay, you know, they're just kind of like, you know, products of a shitty circumstance, you know? You can look at, like, Gabe Newell, for instance. Like, everyone was complaining about the Steam machine or the Valve machine or whatever being expensive as shit. But let's be real here, okay? We're in the middle of a hardware crisis by an entire PR stunt by the AI companies and the RAM manufacturers to drive up prices as much as possible. Okay? So here's the fun fact about, like, the Steam machine. Okay, people were complaining about the Steam machine being $1,000. I'm not here to defend it either. It fucking sucks. But it's because it's in the middle of a hardware crisis where they're basically driving up prices significantly. But on top of that, fun fact, did you know, like, Nintendo and all the main console creators, you know, usually sell their consoles at a loss is because they're basically expecting that you'll buy a bunch of games to basically offset that cost. So the funny part is that, like, consoles are actually artificially cheap to basically get people in, and they'll hope you'll buy the games later. Valve doesn't have that privilege of selling their machine at a loss, right? And so that's the reason why it's so expensive. It kind of sucks. Like, I really do feel bad, but it's not entirely Valve's fault on why it's expensive. And, you know, I never thought I would actually say this, but out of all the military-industrial complex people, Palmer Luckey is probably one of the smarter ones that actually kind of acknowledges what's making America uncompetitive. He's not, you know, pro using infinite foreign labor to undercut domestic labor. You know, he's one of the better, you know, CEOs, even though he's a CEO of a defense contractor firm that believes in meritocracy and competition, which is crazy in this day and age, is because neither the mainstream left nor the mainstream right really care about competition and meritocracy, which is ironic. So, like, those are the only two billionaires I can think off the top of my head that I'd be like, you know what, I like your mind, I like the way you think, I respect that you're actually trying to deliver a concrete product. Now, granted, like, Palmer Luckey's a part of a defense contractor firm, so he's making weapons, but nonetheless, it's like, there's at least the thought of delivering a quality product, right? Which is the whole thesis of right-wing libertarianism. That's the whole point. You know, that is the utopia that right-wing libertarians talk about all the time when they talk about true free market capitalism, right? You know, which I wouldn't have a problem with, is because at the end of the day, I believe in free and open competition. I think it's beneficial for civilization. But the problem is that we have an entire society that is designed to suck as much free time out of the average person and make them a perpetual wage slave, that the competition is completely rendered useless, is because only a handful of rich pedophiles who have the know-how to manipulate the system to their benefit really only succeed. And so you don't have the cream of the crop rising to the top. You have the most insufferable Nepo babies coming to the top of civilization to basically dictate and steer which direction it goes. So, I haven't read anything bad about Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, I'm going to give a hot take on this one, is because the fact is, it's like, I have, like, a mixed opinion about Jeff Bezos, is because out of all the billionaires, okay, the problem with Jeff Bezos is that, like, Jeff Bezos, if you really think about Amazon, he just literally created the most advanced logistics network on the face of the planet. That's all Amazon is. It's just a logistics company, if you really get down to it. And so there's some credit to be had on that one. Is he fucking retarded whenever he runs his mouth on, like, how nobody's going to own their PC parts? Yeah, you know, it's kind of depressing. It's because he's an electrical engineer himself, and he doesn't seem to understand how von Neumann computer machines work. But, you know, some credit there. Now, to basically talk bad about him is because he also abuses the most amount of H-1B visas, and on top of that, he has also used the state to basically push minimum wage hikes to basically crush competitors with his business, okay? And that's the problem I'm talking about, okay? It's because the fact is when billionaires start using the state to benefit their interests, to destroy free and open competition, well, then there's not really a competition now, is there? Is because the fact is you're just using the arm of the state to basically get your way at the expense of all of civilization. And unfortunately, when you don't have competition, the people who rise to the top are essentially our existing elite, which are a bunch of wealthy pedophiles who use their wealth and leveraged it to maintain political power. So, you know, Bezos is a hit or a miss with me, is because the fact is he's been doing some of the stuff that I've criticized a while now as well, is because, you know, he's not innocent of this stuff, but he's more self-aware, is because, like in his recent interview with CNBC, okay, at least he recognizes the utility, and that even in the MAGA base, when they talk about why they call a billionaires communists, is that he recognized that, like, people want, you know, actual free, fair market, open competition. Palmer Luckey would sell out American engineers if he could. He just can't, since defense jobs require someone to be a U.S. citizen. He used H-1Bs when he was at Oculus. Yeah, that's true. Oculus was an interesting one, because the fact is he started that off, but it got bought up by Facebook or Meta or whatever, right? You know, so it's a hit or a miss. Like, there's not really any perfect CEOs, is because at the end of the day, like the whole H-1B visa thing, and I'll say this time and time again, and this will be my appeal to American companies as well. If they want to be competitive, you cannot have infinite rent seeking driving up the cost of living, which makes American labor that much more expensive in the first place, okay? But billionaires will do this. This is the reason why they're doing the whole return of the office stuff, is because they don't want their real estate commercial properties to lose value if everybody is remote working, right? Here we go again with the consequences of my own actions, right? The only reason. So you have to ask yourself, why are the Chinese and the Russians not replacing their workers with infinite Indians? Why are they not using infinite H-1Bs, okay? Because the fact is everybody has economic interests at the end of the day. Everybody has interests, and people want to save costs. When it comes to competition, you know, on a business-to-business level, you know, they're just thinking how they can cut costs to actually produce things. That's all they're thinking about when they're making these decisions. So why are the Chinese companies and Russian companies not doing this? Because the fact is they have a much lower cost of living. And we all know that's the case, is because whenever somebody wants to antagonize American workers about how lazy and entitled and global 1% they are, they always give the third world as the example of where to go if you want to live a cheap cost of living, as opposed to here in the West, you know. So it's because their cost of living is lower. They don't need foreign labor to build things. It's because they already have a domestic working class that works just fine. They can train their domestic population to do these jobs, and they don't need to underpay foreign laborers to actually do these jobs. The whole H-1B visa system in the United States is like a little gotcha thing where they can have like absolute power over a worker, because if the worker doesn't actually do their job or whatever, right, you know, they'll just deport them and suspend their visa and then send them back home, right? So that's always that dangling threat over these underpaid foreign workers, which is actually insipid. But then again, that's just the capitalist class being, you know, bloodless, blood-sucking, soulless parasites on all of civilization once again. It's like, you know, they'll use that, and then they'll turn around to the American workers, say, you know, unlike these third world workers, you're just lazy, and that's the reason why we won't hire you. You know, there's plenty of people. There's actually a CEO of a manufacturing company that was saying this stuff too. It's always amazing how a lot of the people who are in the third world and the capitalist class here in the first world just, you know, always jerk each other off to antagonize us, who are just regular-ass American workers. Sadly, the only jobs for Americans without H-1B visas are defense contractors. I know, right? Like, that's the crazy thing, is that, like, you know, all the other engineering roles basically got offshored, so the only safe jobs in the United States that can't be outsourced to some degree are defense contractor roles. Isn't that crazy? So, but again, I think that's intentional, you know. Thing is, they can't do that is because the fact is that would require, like, you can't use foreign labor on that one, is because, again, you know, that would be foreign workers working on, you know, defense critical industries, and they can't really outsource that as much as they would love to. 100% they would love to, which is kind of funny, is because Microsoft is used for a lot of defense servers, and unironically, it's like they're hosting a lot of their servers in China. On top of that, Copilot is quite literally thinking about powering Copilot with DeepSeek, if you haven't heard. Yes, DeepSeek, the Chinese AI. You know, the funny thing about, like, AI is that, like, the United States is so hell-bent on actually, you know, winning the AI race. You know, the U.S. is so hell-bent. It's amazing how stupid these fucking people are, okay? Because, like, I got, you know, brought up in my workplace and told to use AI integration in my workplace a little bit more, and I'm just kind of thinking, it's like, I'm pro-AI. I like AI. You know, I have an AI rant Sona. People have made fun of me on this channel for that. But the thing is like, I want a serious, you know, honest-to-God, you know, hard, concrete example of where AI is being integrated meaningfully in the workplace and isn't just being used as a cheap excuse to lay people off. And every single time, every company I look at, they're not doing that. They're not using AI in any meaningful way to actually accelerate production or product development. That's what I find absolutely amazing. And so when it comes to the American AI industry, okay, we've all seen the data centers. Maybe I should talk about data centers a little bit more, because the fact is I'm less afraid of the data centers as most of other people, probably including in my chat, by the way, is that with these data centers they're popping up, they're all doing it for AI. But here's the interesting business incentive on why, like, I find it hard to believe that these cloud-based AIs are going to go very far, is because, let's be real here, okay? What company is LM Studio is pretty new. I like LM Studio. It's very fun. But the thing is like, what company is going to trust their intellectual property on a cloud-based AI? And so if that's going to be the case, and companies are not going to be incentivized to actually use these cloud-based AIs, what's the point of these fucking data centers? Okay, let's be real here. So what's the point of these data centers if people are going to transition to local AI running? Because I think that's the direction things are going to go towards, right? Well, you know, the person mentioned LM Studio. You know, that's what the direction I think companies are going to go, is because the fact is that's also, at the same time, a lot of the open models, like Qwen 3.6, Kimi, GLM, DeepSeek, the open weight models that you can run locally are getting just as good as the frontier models. And like, of course, this is what's going to screw over American AI. This is why I say I wasn't taking American AI like very seriously, is because the fact is like the people are competing in the worst possible ways. Like, if it comes to businesses choosing expensive frontier models or local, you know, internal models, you know, they're going to go to the Chinese ones. And that's what's happening over the course of 2025. A lot of companies have been going seriously to the open weight models, which are predominantly Chinese, the open weight models. Like, you can't imagine, like, how... It's like when people are fear-mongering and doom posting, okay? This is why I don't take the doom posters seriously, is because half of them are feds and half of them are retarded. Is because the doom posters are busy telling us that, like, the rich pedophiles is one. You might as well sacrifice your first child to Moloch or whatever, right? You know, they're busy doom posting and stuff like that, not looking at the actual stuff, right? This is just, you know, I'm going to be honest, it's porn for rich people. Rich people are, like, doom posting propagandas because they get off the idea of the normies being helpless against their tyranny. Like, you know, that's the secret of it, right? And the reason, because then you actually look at it and how stupid it really is, you begin to realize, like, how fraudulent these talentless hacks really are. You can't have a civilization that deprives all competition and free time from the vast majority of people from having, like, a meaningful competition, and then be surprised that the people who rise to the top of this fictitious competition are dumb as shit, okay? So, you know, because of that fact, because no company is going to trust, like, a cloud-based frontier AI model, they're defaulting to these open weight models, which are predominantly Chinese, and they're trying to go to locally hosted AI models. What's the point of the fucking data centers? And what are the point of the vast majority of, like, a domestic American AI? What's the... Pardon me? What's the point of it? Where's the game plan? This seems incredibly stupid. It seems like the AI companies are about to go bust. So, you know... I personally think the AI bubble is going to collapse this year, and then you're going to see whatever's going to be left over is going to be the open weight Chinese models, and that's the direction we're going to go to. There's not a single consumer that can run GLM 5.2 under the DeepSeek models. Absolutely. I'm a natural doomer, but most other doomers are just psyops. Well, they're psyops because they want you to feel hopeless. Here's a word of wisdom to everybody in the chat about doom posting, okay? The opposite of doom posting is fed posting. I remember seeing, like, this meme by ContraPoints or whatever, when she was antagonizing people about being revolutionaries and stuff like that. You're not going to do stuff, you know, all you can do is doom post and stuff like that. Is because they want people doom posting, is because it's basically porn for rich pedophiles to jack off to the thought that people are helpless against their evil tyranny. It's kind of pathetic or whatever, right? But the opposite of doom posting is fed posting, is because when you fed post, that means you're actually going to do something, and that's possibly illegal. The surveillance centers. Maybe they could use AI-based surveillance centers, because if you really think about it, AI is really good at forming dossiers on people, which at the end of the day, it's like, you know, it's not even competitive. They're probably going to use the open Chinese ones, which are probably going to be better anyways, which is why, like, Microsoft has been talking about powering Copilot with DeepSeek. Again, you know, you can't, you know, help but point out how pathetic and stupid these people are. And that's the whole point of this channel, okay? It's not here to be a propaganda talk point. It's not here to do anything. I'm just here to basically tell the truth and just show how genuinely stupid these people fucking are. And then, you know, let people know that it's like, these people are not actually intelligent, and the fact is you don't have to worry about anything from them is because the fact is they're impotent retards. But it has been genuinely amazing watching these people literally do the dumbest shit ever and then be surprised. Like I said, one person was like, isn't it funny watching these billionaires lose and, like, you know, fail and burn and, you know, crash miserably? And, you know, the funny part is I'm not too terribly vindictive of a person. I'm not somebody who basically holds a grudge against somebody unless you really done me wrong. You You know, the way I see it is that, like, it's like watching a retard. It's like when I said in my last video of, like, what's it called? Trump's embarrassing visit to Beijing, is because the fact is it's like watching a retard gloat about how they won $1 million. They basically beat up all their friends and their loved ones and stuff like that. People who were actually their supporters, insulted the shit out of them, turned out it was a fake, and then they're literally just like, they ruined everything, and then they're surprised by the consequence of their own action. It's like somebody's like, they're a gloating retard. They try to do a backflip, and then they, halfway through doing it, they basically crack their neck against the pavement. You're just kind of like, wow, you're just retarded. You're not even mad at them. You're just like, this is just pathetic. It's like, that's the way I look at them. It's because it's like, it's more pathetic than anything, the way these people think that they're going like, oh, I'm going to spy on you for all eternity, engage in infinite rent-seeking, become a feudal lord, and then they actually nerfed all their competition, where everybody, including the rest of the world, starts going to China, is because the fact is they make competitive, viable product, and they're just surprised. It's like literally just watching a retard gloat about how they can do a backflip. They do a backflip, crack their neck on the pavement, and just like, you just can't help but feel like, not even maybe a sense of pity, just pity. It's like, wow, you're fucking retarded, dude. Like, it's impressive how retarded you are. Like, and the funny part is, like, a lot of the people who are doom posting are like, we need to stop this, otherwise it's going to be forever. It's going to be over forever. They're going to have their way forever, and it's going to be like, some dystopian nightmare like 1984 for all eternity. But then, you look at the actual reality of it, it's not going to happen. It's just going to be far more pathetic, and it's just going to collapse on its own. That's not to downplay, like, how evil these people are, by the way. It's more or less to point out that they're evil and stupid, which is kind of a nice combo, is because them being stupid actually is beneficial for us. I will look up tutorials on how to do something. You'll get a recommendation that said nothing matters, you are ugly, and give up, something like that. Yeah, it's just feds, dude. The feds that are in the know-how with the rich pedophiles, basically jerking each other off, it's basically like doomerism is just porn for them. They get off the idea of an impotent population at the mercy of their sadism or something like that. And that's why they hate my channel so much, is because the fact is I just point out how stupid they really are. And that destroys their little ego. That's why do you think the haters of this channel are so virulent? Is because the fact is I don't fall into the doom posting camp. Notice how these same haters don't ever go to the doom posting camps, is because the fact is tacitly they secretly support it. So, just keep pointing out the elephant in the room. The Emperor has no clothes, and watch them have like a literal fucking meltdown over this shit. Self-improvement content is designed to make you feel a manufactured personal guilt and sense of personal failure. That was definitely the more like 2000s, style of content, let's talk about self-improvement stuff, because I always call it cope improvement. It's because the fact is all of it is designed to waste your time, to be monetized, to basically, keep your own little corner, right? It's because the fact is with, last decade, or maybe even like 5 years ago, it was the self-improvement stuff. It's like any ill that you're talking about is just because it's an account of personal failure, and so therefore you need to self-improve until you actually are successful. It's like with scams that talking about the $10,000 a month. Now, that's not the veer into the leftist dipshittery of blaming everything as a societal issue and say, well, it's because of society the reason why I can't get a girlfriend or something like that, or why I can't like have any modicum of success. You could still make it to some degree. It's just harder nowadays, a lot harder. And so the thing is with the self-improvement stuff, it's all designed to keep you in your own little box, to basically keep you occupied from paying attention to the real issues. And I hate saying the stereotypical word distraction, is because now even the dime a dozen fed content creator channels are saying everything's a distraction. It's like, so, not to veer too much into that territory. Oh boy, here we go. I need to get myself an iron sword. All right. Oh, did I destroy my lock capability? Yep. You aren't even that big of a channel, but they always seem to find you somehow. Dude, it's funny is because the fact is, yeah, we're not a big channel. We're a tiny corner of the internet, but the fact is because they can't propagandize and monopolize their thoughts. And I like being a tiny corner of the internet. I don't want to be a big guy, because then everybody, it's going to happen inevitably if we continue to grow. But the thing is, it's like, I don't really care about being popular. I really don't care about being a big faction of the internet. I like having my own little tiny corner of the internet where we can talk about things and make fun of the bigger figures for saying stupid shit. And then them down, because like, a cat can stare at a king, but a king can't stare at a cat. So we're technically, in a sort of way, we have a level of free speech by being able to be so small, is because then we can call out the retardation of the bigger propagandists and make fun of them in our tiny little corner of the internet. That's what I like about being tiny, is because the propagandists can't pay too much attention to us, because if they do, then they give us clout and they make us popular and they carry our talking points in the mainstream. But if they ignore us, then we have that level of freedom to basically talk about whatever we want in our tiny corner of the internet. That's why I like being a tiny corner of the internet, is because the fact is we can't necessarily be beholden to the mainstream discussion, but we can basically make fun of and mock of the stupidity of the mainstream people. That's what I like the most about being a tiny corner of the internet. Not to mention they will absorb you. Yeah, they're gonna have to do some stupid little blackmail thing, right? You know, that it's like all the mainstream figures like Destiny or whatever, all shilling for Israel. It's like, you know, they're gonna just make you start shilling for Israel. It's like I tell people, it's like, you know what? It's like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to be anti-Israel, but I'm certainly not gonna pretend that like you're gonna find peace with the vast majority of people, because the vast majority of people in the United States are not happy about Israel. So it's like, even if they were to like, you know, agency capture me to basically spread pro-Israel propaganda or whatever, that's not gonna work. Like, if anything, people are just going to stop listening to me. So it's like, the thing is, you have to actually contend with people's ideas. That's why I don't believe in the idea of a social media influencers, because, you know, you can force ideas down people's throat to a certain degree, but you can't force them to believe anything. And, you know, that's why I don't believe in the social media influencer thing. But that's also why I like having a tiny corner of the internet, because then I can talk about it with you guys and, you know, have, like, relative low responsibility on the consequences of somebody getting upset about what I have to say. I think they're all just the manifestation of the internet. They don't care. They don't care it actually came from you. Yeah, that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to... If somebody was stealing my ideas and then going with it... Because if you haven't noticed, like, some members of the ruling class are carrying our ideas because people in high places to some degree do listen to us, but they just can't acknowledge us because that would make us popular and that would make them look bad. Is that, like, they quietly have to adopt our ideas out of a sense of pragmatism. It's like, I was watching a video by Pete Hegseth, and I swear to God, when he was talking about restoring, like, American hard power, it's like, is he watching my videos, man? You know, I mean, that's great that he's trying to make America competitive again in a meaningful way. But, like, the thing is like, you know, is he secretly watching my videos to talk about hard powers? Because, like, literally 11 videos ago or something like that, I talked about how America lost hard power, but they're still good at soft power with propaganda and stuff like that. And arguably, the propaganda is going down the drain, right? It's like, he's like, we're trying to restore American hard power, not just soft power. And I was like, are you watching my videos, dude? I mean, that's wild if you are. Like, that's great. It's because the fact is like, you know, one person came to my server and said that, like, oh, you're too immature and childish to be a king. You'll be nothing more than a kingmaker your entire time. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, bet. I don't really care about power. I don't want to run for office. I don't really care about being head honcho. I just like giving my 2 cents. And if somebody more important than me can take my ideas and meaningfully implement them, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm not trying to be the most popular guy. That's never been my goal. You know, I'd be perfectly content with somebody else, like, taking my ideas and bringing them to the forefront, and then just, like take for housing, for instance, okay? You know, if somebody came to my channel, they were quietly, some popular, important person was watching my channel secretly, and they discovered my ideas. They're like, if you want to do a capitalist, non-socialist way of fixing the housing crisis, you fix zoning and, you know, produce as much affordable housing as possible. And then they quietly took those policies and implemented them, but never gave mention to my word. I wouldn't care less. I don't care if somebody gives me a shout out. It's because the fact is, the issues that made me create a channel in the first place to talk about the cost of living crisis will tacitly get solved, and therefore I would have no reason to talk about anything on this channel. Well, I mean, I probably talk about, like, other stuff like public transportation or some other autistic nerd shit. But, you know, you get my point. They've adopted my ideas. They've carried through with it. They fixed the issues I cared about. And so that's what matters to me. So somebody more important than us, somebody bigger than us, taking our ideas and carrying them forward, I'm perfectly content with that. I gotta figure out where I put my base. Let's see. Is it over there? That's a gateway. Was it over there? But yeah, no, I don't really care. But it was kind of wild listening to Pete Hegseth talk about restoring American hard powers, because, you know, that's something I talked about a little while, and about that's also why I like Palmer Luckey to some degrees, because the fact is he at least seems like he's trying to make, like, a competitive, you know, product, you know, that's actually useful. I know it's fucked up, we're talking about defense contractor shit, but still, nonetheless, it's like, you know, it's a competitive product that actually does stuff, right? So I can admire it, you know, from a perspective. But, you know, is what it is. I'm trying to figure out which way my thing was actually at. So maybe it was that way. I'm tempted to just go that way. Let's see. Am I facing that direction? I am. We're going to go that way, guys. Yep, in the race, you might have boiled the frog too fast. You know, yeah, so the land used to be a resource while housing was just a place to stay. If it then became a luxury, then not all apartments are luxuries. You know, if the powers that be decided to actually do these things and fix the cost of living crisis and make things normal, I'd be perfectly okay with that. Okay. I don't know what that is. I think I got destroyed by that thing. I'm going to go around that thing. It's 'cause last time I fought that guy with his dogs, I almost got killed. Okay, because I want to get myself an iron sword and a shield, is because it's been a little hot minute to actually do that. So the fun part about this game is that you got to get thorium from the desert. So, like, you see that little lava area? Like, if I went in there, I'd be, like, turbo destroyed, is because that's, like, some really high-level place to actually fight in, and I would have just immediately gotten destroyed. Okay, yeah, that was stupid. Why did I come here? That's gonna do. He's gonna throw spears at me. So we're gonna go this way. Okay. Y'all need a way to limit investments into housing. See, Congress is trying to do that, but here's the tough part, and boomers are going to scream at me for this one. Boomers occupy the vast majority of household wealth, upwards of 80% of, like, rental properties, okay? And I don't mean to get, like, too crazy on it, but, like, you know, we need to answer the boomer question. We need to answer the boomer question to get too edgy right now. But the thing is boomers occupy the vast majority of that housing. And so, you know, as long as they lock that up and they basically do it just to grow their real estate portfolios, this will be a problem. Like, you know, this is what's making American labor uncompetitive. Like I already said multiple times in my videos and my streams, is that I and many other Americans would be perfectly fine working for a lower wage if housing was cheaper. You can't do the stuff where you're going to be expected to pay a $4,000 a month in rent, cost, while at the same time, demanding to be underpaid, and then like they just offshore your job to India or whatever, right? You know, every step of the way, it's been the last 50 years has been the narrative of the American capitalist to cut costs at all corners, at every step of the way, pass the cost to all of civilization just so they can be nominally competitive. Okay, so I was here, so I think my base is over there. Are Indians a counter for boomers? I don't know. Indians always seem to scam boomers every single time. It's always like some Indian dipshit that's like basically running off of like a boomer's money or something like that. So I don't know if it's like maybe it's just like kind of the natural result of a boomer. But it's kind of funny because boomers will talk endlessly about Muslims, but then they're like, you talk about normie racism or stuff like that, but get them to talk about their underpaid Indians and like they'll just change tune completely. Okay, where's my stuff? I don't even know where my stuff is. I've been yapping so much from the microphone, which don't get me wrong, I love chatting with you guys. It's been a very good discussion. I love what's going on, what we're talking about in the stream. Thing is, I just lost my base. I've just been talking too much. See, this is the thing. I never consider myself much of a public speaker, but I'm certainly a yapper. And once you get me yapping, I talk for a while. And now I forgot where my base is, and I'm gonna try and figure out where it is. Oh, this goblin's... nope, not fighting you. Come on. 3 of them? Are you serious? Okay, cool. Not fighting that goblin. Nice try, though. Rock, paper, scissors. I think we're in a less bad position than the USA, but it's going to be hard. Yeah. I don't know where you're from, but probably. Thoughts on the EU? Looks like we're going through a slow motion trade war with China. So, you know, the EU. Let's talk about the EU, is because I didn't know how bad the EU was until, like, I started watching, like, what's going on with that current heat wave and stuff. You know, it's amazing to me, like, with the EU. It's, you know, with the EU, it's like I've said, they've done things stupidly since like they tore down all their nuclear power plants. Like this, like I don't know what the Western world has collectively gone into like this, you know, fit of retardation. You know, the entire Western world, with Europe particularly. Back in 2022, okay, over the course of the last 15 years, you know, Germany has torn down every nuclear fission power plant in its country in the name of reaching some nebulous green energy target. Okay, let's set that right on the ground. Okay, right. Not only did they actually do it in the right way, they quite literally went to natural gas, which is not a green alternative. It still emits carbon dioxide. I'll bet like maybe 50% of burning coal or whatever, right? And then on top of that, they go into a war with Russia, like a proxy war with Russia, which is the main supplier of 60% of their natural gas. Like, if you want to talk about fucking retarded, you know, when in 2022, Germany, you know, when that happened, like they were going through like a cold crisis because they had no natural gas. It's like, you know, once again with the AC stuff, it's like, you know, like these things are not difficult. They're produced by a lot of companies. Now, granted, like with the AC thing, it's a little bit different because, you know, like granted, it doesn't get that hot there from what I've heard. But I've lived in the South my entire life, so it's like 100-degree weather is not uncommon here in the United States South. But the thing is, it's like, you know, it's been worse. But the thing is, it's like, I don't know why the West has just gone collectively retarded, you know, in almost every aspect of like long-term planning or whatever. Germany has been ruled by tards. France is less dumb. France has had nuclear fission power for a while, so like, you know, at least they have cheap electricity. And I remember arguing with so many fuckwits about that for, you know, years about why France has nuclear power, or like cheaper power. And they were like, well, it's because it's subsidized. Like, that doesn't matter. It's just cheaper in general. It's because nuclear fission power is just so energy dense. But they just don't listen. It's like, you know, the tards, like, you know, and it was kind of funny because it was like, I love Soyance types back in like the 2010s. You know, that were basically doing this stuff, basically saying nuclear power was uncompetitive, even though I literally pointed out the science of the numbers of how much energy per unit kilogram a kilogram of uranium-235 has. You know, just didn't want to listen. Oh. I have a feeling I'm never going to find that base again. Okay, so it's not here. Maybe I can find it with some torch lighting. We're not going to go by that base again. Germany is ran by a never-ending shame of World War II, which is ironic, is because, you know, they're big, like, supporters of Israel, which is currently doing a genocide, but, you know, there's that. Still, Spain has, by the way, Spain has a lot of renewables and electricity that's quite cheap there. Yeah. How did I lose my base? I can't, you know, we're just gonna have to RTB. We're gonna have to return to the original one that we have over here, is because I cannot find, my yapping has carried me off into some unknown land, which I cannot find my way back from. Okay. All your base belong to us. Yeah, basically. So I lost my base, guys. We're gonna have to go someplace else. Oh yeah, it's like at the beginning. Germany only supports Israel because of the Holly. Yeah, oh I know. And they're just doing it as a sense of, you know, shame, but then they're just literally doing the same thing with Israel. Imagine like 100 years in the future after the whole Israel thing's gonna be doing, and then they're just gonna be like, you know, well, we supported a second Holocaust, but, you know, you know, but we're not gonna do it again while they support like some other Holocaust against like another country. It's like they're just perpetually Holocausting people. Nuclear fusion researchers being offed. That has been suspicious, because whose interest is it to basically off those nuclear fusion researchers? Like, that's the big question. The reason why I've heard the conspiracy theories about the nuclear fission or fusion researchers being off. But the problem is, you always got to ask the question, to whose interest does this benefit? Is because the fact is, it's like, we can talk about conspiracy theories all day, but the thing is, it's like, who benefits from the death of those, you know, those researchers? Like, for instance, when Iranian scientists were being offed, you know, working in nuclear scientists in Iran were being, like, knocked off, it's like obviously in Israel's interest to basically, you know, yoink and delete those scientists. Or like whenever like some Israeli scientist gets killed by like Iranian assassins or whatever, right? You know, there's interest at play when it comes to that, right? With the nuclear fusion ones, I would have to understand like whose interest it would benefit to basically justify like why those people got destroyed. See, now I can't even, there's my base. It's that way, isn't it? No, it's this way. Okay, so it's this way. So, you know, there has to be an interest on whose interest at play is going to actually justify that. So that's why it's like, you know, that's it. I'm kind of skeptical on like whether or not it's like a loosely related set of events on who it would actually benefit for the death of those nuclear fusion scientists. Probably the oil companies. You never know. Maybe it is the oil companies that are actually doing this stuff. Because the thing is, they don't want alternative energy. But the thing is, they've been doing that stuff for years. But now we're finally coming to the point where like now there's a competitor nation that's offering cheaper and lower cost alternatives. It's like, you know, now with the Chinese at play, it's like these companies can't get away with that shit anymore. Because they'll just go to China. That's the brutal part. And that's right around the corners, because they can't really get around with that either. Is because, again, you know, if the Chinese can produce a cheaper product, and like, of course, I wouldn't stop the United States from trying to assassinate those people, but like, still, nonetheless, it's like people are going to go to an alternative if they can. Big Oil hates Tesla. They use any kind of like undercut, like, or underhanded tactic to cut off competition as much as possible. It's called competition killing from the crib. It's like when you basically kill like competition in its infancy. Jeff Bezos has done it. You know, these different companies are doing it. But the problem is that if you don't have genuine competition, like, again, everything else suffers because everything goes in like lower quality. That's the unfortunate part. That's the thing that like a lot of right-wing libertarians don't like to admit, is like the amount of like cutthroat competition that's used to stifle competition in the first place. Didn't one of them tell their friend that she was in mortal danger before she got deleted? I could believe it. You know, I could 100% believe it, that there was probably some relevant thing. You know, if anybody wants to type in the chat on like what the reason is, you know, what they think the interested motives were to actually do that, I'd be interested in hearing this, because I saw it going viral for a little while, and that was like, apparently the incident happened like several years ago too, so it wasn't actually a new incident. It was something that was going on quite some time ago. Let's see if we can find some rats in these caves. But yeah. Is there any like broader context on what could have led to that? Also, notice how the stream's much nicer this go around is because the fact is I fixed my internet connection, unlike the last stream that kept cutting out and stuff like that. There's this magical thing called an Ethernet cord, and I ended up using that, and it's just much better to actually have a continuous network connection. So that's why it's probably coming out pretty fun. That, and on top of that, because I am an obese 300-pound loser using a version of Arch Linux, you know, naturally, like, network driver support's pretty lackluster when it comes to Linux. So the problem with like Linux is that like the network driver was having some problems, and for some reason like this latest update is just really bad with managing my network controller, which is just kind of unfortunate. What do you think of the alien stuff that the US is releasing? I think it's bullshit. I'm gonna be honest with you. When it comes to the alien stuff, whenever I hear aliens, that's like the lamest distraction on the face of the planet. Because, A, if aliens actually visited Earth, what reason would the governments of the world have to hide that visitation? Like, don't get me wrong, conspiracy theories are fun, crop fields, whatever, right? But what interest is there to hide it? And on top of that, what interest is it of the... Yeah, it's real tech. What interest is it of these aliens to respect, like, the wishes to keep alien existence secret from, like, their population? We're talking about a much more superior and advanced, like, alien species visiting Earth. Like, what interest do they have to conceal their existence from, like, you know, a lower civilization? Like, let's be real here. Like, unless you kind of believe, like, that Star Trek notion of, like, you know, aliens or whatever, which I personally don't believe. You look at most instances throughout history, it's like, in a superior alien civilization, it's like they conquer. It's fucked up to say. Everyone I know that aliens are Posadis. That's kind of funny. Does competition really achieve innovation, though, or does cooperation do a much better job? I think cooperation has much more upsides than competition. See, the thing is cooperation and competition both go hand in hand. Okay, you can have cutthroat competition, and that's going to produce no tangible value. But here's kind of the thing. Overly competitive, you know, groups and societies will literally use social gaslighting to basically, like, destroy the achievements of the individual. See, the thing is, if you want to have, like, a healthy civilization, you need to have a healthy level of cooperation and competition. You can't get rid of competition. If you want to go to have, you know, excessive, like, cooperation, you're going to get, like, a we care society where nothing actually meaningful gets done, is because we're all caring about the feelings to preserve the cooperation of the group. And that's what I call over-socialization on this channel, is that once you get into there, you can't have anybody have the interest to go above and beyond, is because the fact is that goal, that achievement, that outcome is going to be socialized by the group. And that's not to say that, like, you know, pure individuals exist either, is because that's not true. But the thing is that you lose that incentive structure to innovate, because the fact is you have not really given the incentive structure for the individual to come forward and, you know, do things in their own unique way. By that same token, you can't have the level of cutthroat competitive individualism you have here either. Because the thing is, then you just basically get what we have now, where, you know, the cream of the crop is literally retarded, because they didn't actually meaningfully compete in any, you know, meaningful metric. They just literally, you know, destroy the competition so much that they were the de facto last one standing. And, you know, so that's how you get the retards like we have with our existing ruling class. You know, so you have to have a balance between the two. I'm more on the individualist competitive side of the aisle, but the thing is that, like, you know, the thing is you can't go too far into either direction, because then you're just going to get really stupid outcomes. Aliens are an easy red herring. The only alien is the Zuck. Yeah, you give the Zuck way more credit than he probably actually deserves. He definitely does look like a dried out fish. He has that kind of look to him. If it is real tech, you need to know, just make sure you have the firmware. Linux is fine with most devices now. That's fair. If you want to, like, send in the chat, like, what you think the firmware is, where to look at it, I'll look into it. Recently, TCL is being demoralized for doing the exact same thing Samsung did to expand. Yeah, I believe government and corps operate like criminals, enterprises in the background. The sooner that one realizes that, the easier it is for things to happen. Yeah, no, you gotta understand, like, the state exists to protect the interest of the ruling class in any given society. It just so happens that we live under the capitalist class that actually do this. So, you know, people are becoming more aware of that fact, and people are getting upset. I mean, even the funny part is that, you know, when it comes to, you know, when you watch the double standards of the capitalist class, you stop, like, you know, really kind of falling into the lies that they kind of put forward about free market capitalism. You kind of realize, like, how hypocritical these people really are. That's what essentially drove me to, like, the economic left side of the aisle. It was right after COVID, watching the average house price skyrocket to $500,000. You know, the same old tactics used in 2008 to give billionaires free money. You know, the payroll protection program, which 70% of the funds essentially just went, you know, to the CEOs. They laid off their workforces anyways. It's like, when you notice this pattern, you essentially stop believing the lies, and you're just like, nope, the common problem is rich people. You just start becoming an automatic billionaire hater. You know, and then you essentially get into my position, and you just start just hating billionaires right off the bat. You just stop caring about what they have to say. You just realize that, like, 90% of the things that billionaires say are a lie to basically feel good. Even Jeff Bezos, when he was talking about, like, well, if Americans want more free competition, we can give more free competition. He's only saying that is because MAGA has grown and people have gotten tired of the corporate double standard of basically infinite welfarism for the billionaire corporation. So, you know, the thing is, they only saying that is because their feet are at the fire now. It's like, you know, so you can't even trust what they say, like, a lot of the time. That's why I don't trust Jeff Bezos. You know, you have to look at their actions. You know, Gabe Newell and Valve has at least been trying to make quality products for civilizations. That's a good one. So that's, like, why I can kind of nominally say, like, okay, you know what? This guy's not too bad. Wait a minute. Okay. I literally came out the place. Okay, where is this located? Okay, so it's not that far. It was literally right here the entire time. I need to place a marker. Quick marker. Let's put that here so we can save this. Now I can build a sword. Cool. I was wondering when I was going to do that. I was wondering where this location was. Okay, where's my armory bench? Okay, I need iron ingots. Okay. So we're out of iron. So we might need to go back underground. Can we build a pickaxe? I want to get an iron pickaxe. So yeah, no, a lot of the capitalist class, I can't even make an iron pickaxe. Well, I guess we're going back down digging. So, when you kind of realize that about the capitalist class, you just stop listening to what they have to say and you just disregard everything they say and you just look at their actions. Be like, yeah, we're not going to tolerate your existence. Sorry. You know, you can do your own thing, but if you start influencing all of civilization to be a rent-seeking parasite, we're not going to like you. It's just that simple. So, we found out there, so if we can go back there, we can go down a little bit lower to get some more iron. We're a little bit low on iron. Then we can go find a desert biome. Doesn't the name of Oswald Spengler ring a bell? And what's your view on him? Well, Oswald Spengler, dude, I haven't heard of him in a while. You talking about like the rise and the fall of the West, and he was like comparison. Yeah, I've read him like years ago. So my opinion on him is that I think he's right on like a cultural, like a civilizational aspect where civilizations rise and fall. So I think the United States, my honest opinion when it comes to the rise and fall of Western civilization is that you really are going to need like a Bonapartist, like Caesarian, like figure to actually turn things around. And even if you did get a central figure and you turned it into that kind of like style civilization, there's no guarantee that that person would effectively govern in such a way that, you know, leads to, you know, the excellence of the civilization, right? So it's a hit or a miss, but that's the current state of affairs because, you know, you saw this with the late Roman Republic before Caesar marched on Rome, you know, when Augustus Caesar started building his forces, you know, and basically bring the Optimates, for instance. It's always kind of funny. Like, you could see the great democratic gaps, like even in ancient Roman civilization with the Optimates or whatever, right? Basically saying, well, they're subverting the popular will. They're against democracy or whatever, right? You know, and it's ironic is because the fact is they'll declare a populist figure to be anti-democracy when their polling numbers and how disliked they really are like skyrocketing through the roof with how unpopular they are. That's how out of touch these like mainstream politicians are and these political figures really are. So I'm gonna put this in here because why not? Okay. We haven't been capitalist since 2008. No, I agree. But the thing is, if the capitalist class is going to continue playing games like this and like, you know, playing this kind of like double standard game, it's like, you know, at that point in time, it's like, why care about using the state to go after the capitalist class after they've used the state to terrorize ordinary people for so long? If like, you know, Larry Fink and all these like, surveillance, you know, capitalists are talking about how they're going to use the state to terrorize everybody. Again, like, why should they get mad when Mom Donnies pop up and they're going to, you know, use socialism to go after the capitalist class? It's only fair. If they use the state against to terrorize ordinary people, the people use the state to go after the wealthy. Alistair, is entryism through the Democrat Party based or a meme? It's 100% a meme. Now, if you want to go do that on your own thing, and, you know, try and influence the Democrat Party and, like, meet people into like, these organizations where they're similarly like-minded, that's totally fine, but I would not ever bank on that ever changing. I think literally going third party, reaching as many people as possible, and then having a discussion and spreading our ideas, and then getting the bigger fellows, the bigger people to basically submit to our ideas and pass them is probably the better goal, okay? And it almost kind of sounds like it's like, oh, maybe Alistair's allergic to power or something like that, right? But look at the fact that when Larry Fink is talking about using, you know, nuclear fission power to basically make energy more efficient, right? Or when Pete Hegseth is using our talking points on this channel to actually, accept our critiques that we've done here. Or when people in high places start talking about what we're talking about here, you know, that's far more important, is getting important people to basically do our thing and acknowledge it as like a fact of reality, as opposed to just trying to basically take over a movement dishonestly. It's much better to basically put these ideas in their face, mock them, and then also get them to basically take their ideas while they're at it. Because the thing is, at one point or another, if we continue to grow in popularity, we continue to become big or something like that, right? At one point or another, they're forced to engage with our ideas. They don't really have a choice. And that's the goal, is because once you get a large enough of a political bloc where they can't ignore you any longer, that's when you can use that as leverage or power to basically get them to do what you want them to do. Now, obviously, you have to be within reason, which is why I have a video coming out, why, you know, the difference between a demagogue and a statesman is because the fact is you want them to be within reason to pass your policies. You see, Trump was partially right about, like, you know, I could be the best communist ever is because I can just promise free shit and, you know, become popular about it. It's because there's a kernel of truth in that. You can't just give free shit. It's because we all have to work to some degree to, you know, maintain civilization. Should we have a welfare policy? Yeah, it's still going to be funded by taxes. Should we have some social democratic policies? Yeah, but that's still going to be funded by somebody's labor at some degree, right? So That's the way I see it. I don't consider it entryism. I don't consider entryism to be like a valid thing. Growing a political bloc and putting your ideas as forefront as possible to force these people to listen to your ideas is the way to go. Is because if you go to these people as a nobody, they'll just ignore you entirely. So, European economy always kind of depended on the colonies, sadly. That is, we capitalists are, in the sense, it's a reach for ultimate capital. Yeah, I disagree. Capturing institution is a part and parcel of growing as a counter-elite's influence. Well, yeah, you're growing your influence. So, as long as you can basically get them to do... Because what's our goal here? Is our goal to gain power? No, power is just a tool to achieve what we want to achieve, right? A lot of people think that power is the end goal for any, like, serious political movement. No, getting our policies through and getting what we want is our end goal. Power is just the means to obtain it. So, you know, sure, going in these institutions and gaining political power, but that's just the means to an end at the end of the day. We got to take over city councils before anything else. Even that talking point that I've talked about a little while too, right? The thing is that, like, you know, those are tactics you can implement on a meaningful level to basically push these people out of these positions of power and, you know, bring them into a level of accountability, right? So, you know, there's ways to basically make the establishment listen to you. And, you know, obviously, one of those things is basically just getting loud and brash as possible, but also within reason. All right, now we got some more iron. We can go exploring a desert biome, because that's what I'm looking for. Because we can get a desert biome, we can find thorium. There we go. More leather. Where's that tanning rack? Let's go ahead and put you in there. And let's go ahead and... Okay, let's melt that. So... Nothing more that they simply want to build their own utopia. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. If they build their own utopia in space, they can have that as long as they never come back down to Earth to demand any rent-seeking parasitism or control over any of their government. Because the thing is, if we boot them out of our governments and we just start running civilization our own way, do I really care what they're doing in their mansion far off? If they want to build their own utopia, they can do that as far away from me as possible. It's like that one guy was like, if all the billionaires leave, who's going to provide all the jobs? They're like, you mean all the jobs at the offshore to India and then capture which governments to basically pass infinite rent-seeking? Like, no, dude, I don't want them in my civilization. They can go build their utopia, just not around me. That's the way I see about it. Better to be a gardener than deal with the politics of man. That's fair, but it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Let's see if we can find a desert biome. See, if we go in there, we're gonna get, like, turbo destroyed. Like, there's no way we're gonna actually make it in there. Like, it even looks like Mordor, too. And the tundra areas are also notoriously difficult. We have to find a desert. It looks like there's one right here. There seems to be south. But there's a lot of deserts. Man, we literally are stuck between Mordor. So how's your guys' morning going? Hopefully it's going good. Had some pretty good discussions. I like what we talked about so far, but how's your morning going otherwise with that? It's almost lunchtime. Depending on where you're from. Already is past lunchtime for me. Getting involved locally is the best strategy in the beginning phase. See, the thing is that, like, if you take over, like, local city councils, you take over DA offices, you take over, like, you know, different attorney offices, you know, the thing is you can impart, like, far more, like, political power through that than trying to capture the national government. And not to get too Fed posty, but then you could capture, like, state and local governments and essentially do what the Confederates did and basically start neutering, like, national politics. That's good, Paul. Glad your morning's going good. Hot. Okay, you're from Europe. Shout out to my boy, like, my brothers out there, dude. That's gotta suck with how hot it is. But it's chill, cozy vibes over here. Tripping a bolt on an engine, man. Impressive. Alright, let's see. Pickaxe. I've only got 2 leather. I'm gonna create one for a pickaxe. I'm gonna get rid of this. Okay, can I build a sword? No, I'm out of leather again. We're so... it's over, guys. Mordor or Mustafar? I don't know. I think they're both pretty bad. But Mustafar is an entire planet, so I think Mordor is safer is because it's like, you know... Okay, nope, we're so back. We got a sword now. Sweet, okay. We got rid of that. Now we have a sword. Now we need to make a shield. Where can we build that? Okay, we need leather for that one. So we're kind of out of luck on that one. Been sweating the entire day. Man, there's a lot of Europeans in the chat. I feel bad for you guys. That sucks. Like, the thing is that, like, I don't know, the Anglosphere used to be known as the place where it ruled with an iron grip. And it took, you know, circumstances of an incredible crisis to actually get the Anglosphere to revolt. But now that I look at the rest of Europe, because we had a century for the British Empire ruling the world, and now the American Empire for the 20th century, it's like that mentality of top-down tyrannical rule has rubbed off onto you guys. And it's unfortunate. Because now you're at the whims of, like, the same, like, just garbage culture. Thoughts on Japan being forced to sell their 30-year bonds to save the yen, making Japan the economic slave backfired pretty hard. Yeah, the thing is, the United States is a dying empire. You know, it sucks, but it is what it is. And so the sooner that people kind of recognize that and kind of go their own way, it's like, you know, maybe not so bad. But yeah, sweating the entire day, that's fucking terrible. Yeah, I've lived in the South my entire life. The Southerners use AC is because, like, you know, probably from June to about September, it's usually in the hundreds pretty easily. So we're kind of used to it here in the South. Oh, good, I got some light hide. And I can build a shield. Maybe. Okay. Glory to the Kaiser. You know, the funny thing is that, like, the Kaiser was actually more pro-union worker. He was more social democratic than, like, what was going on in the United States at the time. It's kind of crazy, like, how even, like, more of the monarchistic figures were actually far more, you know, benevolent to their people than the modern capitalist class we have today. Eat the Rich. Every Eat the Rich movie is long-nosed, celebrating defeating the Wasp. See, that's kind of the thing. I was talking with Undead Chronic about this in chat, like, a little while ago, because, in fact, we were talking about, like, you know, the retardation of the left. It's like, if they had never antagonized, like, the average, like, white dude that's just, like, living cost of living crisis, like, none of this shit would have happened. Like, none of them would have gone far right. But, you know, bygones be bygones. The left screwed the pooch on that one, and now they're more unpopular than ever. And they're just kind of, they're still scratching their heads, like, why did all of a sudden, like, all these people become Nazis? It's like, dude, I've said this for 7 years. It's like, you can't continuously antagonize, like, you know, white men and then be surprised that they just go that direction. It's like, are you stupid or something? Well, then yes, they are. They're actually that fucking stupid. You know, and I don't even consider myself a nationalist, but it's like, you know, actions, consequences. Like, how did you not see this was going to happen, man? That was only because they were scared as fuck of the commies. That's true. That's absolutely true. See, that goes to show, it's like, you know, you need to be some degree of economic leftism. Even if you don't believe in, like, the values of communism, you don't care about the hunky-dory, you know, social, we care, community spirit garbage that communists promote. It's like, you know, you can't disagree with the fact that having, like, a strong working class movement wasn't able to beat the wealthy into submission, you know? Because the thing is that, like, you know, if they're left to their own devices, we end up where we are today, where the average house price is $500,000 and the rich pedophiles go on stage talking about how everybody's going to be perpetual renters. So you really need to build that political force. And that's why I hate doomer posting, is because the fact is, it's like, you know, they hate us is because the fact is we're not pussies. We don't really care about cowering to these people. We hate them with every ounce and fiber in our being. We're not going to give them an ounce of a humiliation ritual to basically beat us in submission, is because that's how much we hate them. So, you know, that's why they hate us. Karl Marx was a base neat. Again, to my knowledge, it's still heavily debated and a controversial topic. Yeah, fair enough. I'd imagine antagonize one, if not all, the biggest demographic in the United States. You know, part of it was a psyop, and also part of it, the American left is just genuinely that retarded. It's like, you know, I still remember arguing with these people. It's like, you know, you realize that if you keep, like, because one of the funny parts is I was already, like, sympathetic to economic leftism when I voted for Trump in 2016. You know, it's kind of funny because people talk about MAGA communism. But, like, you know, I was already, like, an OG Trump supporter back in 2016 because it's like, oh, he's going to bring back manufacturing jobs back to the United States. He's trying to compete against China, yada, 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 right? You know, and the funny part is that, like, you know, he had a lot of economical left talking points, but so did Bernie Sanders. So I listened to, like, a lot of both of them at the same time. But the thing is that, like, you know, the mainstream Democrat Party, and this is why I say entryism doesn't work, is because the fact is you got to understand within the Democrat Party, you have, you know, upper middle class neoliberals who unironically think you're a Treatlerite for talking about the cost of living crisis, okay? And so you will never form a pact with them in an honest manner. They will always try to take over whatever group you form and then dictate the terms and conditions and push your politics out, whether it be Medicare for all, you know, stronger union participation. They will always try to push you out, no matter what, okay? And so the thing about it is that, like, when it comes to, you know, the cost of living crisis, you know, when it comes to Donald Trump, you know, that's the reason I originally liked a lot of his talking points. But, you know, also why I don't support the entryism when it came to the Democrat Party is because you're not going to really find, like, a common cause with these people. is people don't like you. They will never accept your politics. And if they try to accept your politics, they're going to take it over and veer it to something else. Like they do every single time. Alistair, do you think we can eventually get the masses to see the difference between communists and liberals? I want to say, believe what I can, the DSA are such smooth brains that they can undermine us. Well, yeah, I think that's going to happen is because the fact is, if you haven't looked at, like, what's going on with the internet nowadays, like, people who are traditionally very far right are caring about economic issues is because Donald Trump was not actually able to fix the cost of living crisis. So, yeah, I do see that happening in the near future. We're already kind of past that point. I think we already reached peak Atlanticism, I think. I agree. Yeah, I agree. No wonder why you get booed into oblivion. Yeah. Boomers getting booed into oblivion. You gotta love how out of touch they are. One way out, if we could take time. They actually happen at graduation. You know, yeah, the CEOs, these boomer CEOs are talking about integrating AI or there's something to that effect. And, you know, they just got booed off the stage. It's like, shocker. You know, you told it was going to take everybody's job. You know, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story because here's going to be a fun one. So gather around the campfire because this is going to be a fun one. I had a, you know, junior engineer approach me about the current, job crisis going on with, like, engineering and stuff like that is because, companies are basically, they're also reducing hiring. On top of that, AI. He also went to a competitive university, by the way. Very smart kid and whatnot. Really nice guy and stuff like that. But this is how you know you're getting old. When he's like 10 years younger than me, he's just fresh out of college. You're just like, fuck, I'm old. But he was like, you know, AI has become a real problem in universities where people are using AI to basically do their entire homework sets, and it's actually doing the answers correctly. And I had to tell him, it's like, you know, it's because, like, he's basically told me there's a lot of engineers that shouldn't be engineers, you know, these days because they use ChatGPT or whatever to basically solve their homework set. Now, as somebody who went to a very difficult university and studied STEM and studied difficult things in the sort, right? I told him this. That, you know, even in my time, when I was in school, when people had to actually study these things the manual way, that even in my time, there were people trying to cheese their way through their homework by using things like Chegg and then computer algebra systems to solve their math problems, okay? This isn't necessarily new. Even in my time when I was in university studying STEM, a STEM degree, it's like there were always people who were literally just trying to skirt by to study as little as possible and just barely understand the material just to pass the exam and just make the money. And I said, these people have always existed to some degree or another, right? And usually in-person exams fix this problem, right? You're not going to get rid of them. ChatGPT just kind of brings them out in full exposure. And if colleges just go to more in-person examination, like you're forced to actually learn the material, otherwise you will just fail the exam. Because if ChatGPT is doing your entire homework set, then you're not doing your homework set, you know? So I told him, he's like, well, then what about all, you know, these engineers will graduate from the universities, you know, and, you know, how are companies going to tell the people who actually care about learning the material and then studying it, or the people who just basically cheese by? Now, it's like I told him, it's like, it's not your job to, I mean, okay, it's to some degree your job to basically showcase your skills, right? And showcase what you've done, right? But it is the job of every HR department, if they're trying to hire a competent engineer, to actually evaluate their skills in a meaningful manner. Is because when I worked for my last boss, probably about a year ago, a year and a half ago or stuff like that, right? You know, there was really this kind of writing on the wall that, like, you know, you had to play a lot of reputation games to prove your worth as an engineer, but they would literally just hold your reputation over the line as hostage to basically make you work hard, but then not give you the actual recognition after the fact, right? The thing is, it's the job of the HR department and the hiring managers to actually recognize somebody's skills on whether or not they can actually reasonably bring and contribute value to the team, as opposed to just the person who's trying to get a job, right? Because the thing is that, like, if you play the gaslight games, right, you hire people just based on likability. You do the over-socialized midwit bullshit of, like, oh, we don't really care about your skills. Social skills are more important than hard skills. Like, that's going to come home to roost. Like, you're going to be consequentially less competitive is because the fact is you wanted to play nepotism games as opposed to hiring a competent candidate. I told them, this is the job of HR. If it's a company that doesn't value meritocracy and competition, you know, that is their loss if you're actually a genuinely talented or capable person, right? Because we've come to the, you know, because of the rich pedophiles who rule our country have gaslit us so much into believing that competition doesn't exist and that they're just some inevitable force of infinite pedophilia where they diddle children in their stuff, right? They're still subject to a level of competition where they have to basically be somewhat meritocratic to actually compete meaningfully. Tucker Carlson has talked about this as well, you know, about how the ruling class hates this, okay? So the thing is that, like, you know, to some degree, it's in their interest to actually hire the most capable person. They don't really have a choice. We can talk about HR people, you know, being scummy as fuck, and they certainly do exist, but they do have to participate to some degree or they become less competitive, okay? And the consequence is they make shittier products. It's like, you know, I was, like, listening to them talking about, like, oh my god, we might lose to this other company or some shit like that, right? And I said, well, the thing is that when I first got hired at my company, you know, a while ago, the first thing my boss told me is, I never promote the smartest person on the team. The social skills are more important than hard skills. And he was shadowboxing another engineer through me because he was apparently too smart for his own good. You want to talk about peak nepotism? This guy was a rich guy that grew up in a rich family that, you know, had his family pay him like $100K for a down payment on a 90s house for those $500K, $500,000 in the 90s. Meant it was a big fucking house. And, you know, he was basically saying college is only useful for connections. It's like, you know, peak nepo baby bullshit, you know. And, you know, the funny part is that, like, if those people exist too much, you don't have a competitive company. You don't have a competitive company. You don't make a competitive product. It's because you've only hired your buddies that are basically going to glaze you or, you know, lick your butthole through every step of the way, right? So you're essentially forced by circumstance to actually compete to some degree. And that's what they hate. Okay? So I told the guy, it's like, you know, yes, you can talk about how unfair it is. There's gaslight games over your reputation to some degree, but if they want to make a competitive product and remain competitive, they have to give recognition to your skill at one point or another. And so if you want to win in this field, just refine your skills. Is because as long as you continue refining your skills, you're still learning things, you're doing new things, you're experimenting with things, you really can't necessarily go wrong. Because funny enough, by the way, you know, they've been finding out that senior engineers are actually being hired at a higher rate than junior engineers. The junior engineers are getting fucked over big time. Which I feel bad for him because he's a really smart guy. And I told him, don't feel stupid. It's like, you know, it's a learning process. You're learning things all the time. You know, just have an open mind and, you know, be ready to learn things and you'll be good and just refine your skills, right? But it's fucked up is because what they don't tell you right now is that senior engineers are not having a problem getting hiring. In fact, there's been about 10 or 20% more job openings for senior engineers. What companies are doing is literally defaulting on hiring senior engineers only because the fact is they don't want to take the risk of training somebody that could just job hop. Companies hate that shit, like I said in my last video, right? But that being said, I told the guy, yes, it sucks. You're not really losing anything by the dipshit engineers not doing anything, is because at the end of the day, like, real skill is not just, like, you know, replaceable by, like, you know, gaslighting or something like that, no more than my previous boss playing the reputation games. And so just focus on refining your skills, learning new things, and that will carry itself, okay? And I think that helped him a little bit. I think he was kind of put at ease a little bit like that, is because the fact is it's not, you're basically selling your skill. Think of an HVAC guy, okay? You know, he replaces like a relay in like 15 minutes and then charges you $600. What, you're charging me $600 to replace a relay? No, he's charging you $600 not only for the 15 minutes of immediate labor, but also the experience that came with knowing how to fix your problem in 15 minutes. Is because, let's be real here, if you could actually fix it yourself, you wouldn't be hiring somebody else. But you would have to spend years actually learning how to actually replace these things to diagnose the problem within 15 minutes. So I think he kind of, you know, had a little bit of rest on that one, is because the fact is, I told him, it's like, engineering is a very experience heavy field. The more you work in it, the more you learn and the more valuable you become. As long as you basically continue learning stuff, you're actually pretty useful. And as much as like the HR gaslighters and word cells would love to play reputation games, because you'll find more often than not, if you work as a professional engineer, that it's not the technical problems that are hard. You actually learn that as you go along. It's actually the insufferable project managers who are atechnical dipshits who don't know what they're talking about that are the most insufferable people on the face of the planet. It's because, you know, it's ironic that they were celebrating in glee that AI was going to replace the engineers because it could do all the technical stuff, but it would never actually replace the human skills for whatever reason. I never understood that piece of logic, but neither here nor there, right? But the thing is, when they started trying to vibe code everything over the last 3 years, notice how they didn't make any meaningful products. There's no examples of where AI has been used in a meaningful product except for like a one-shot like tech demo, AI tech demo that's not maintainable or even scalable, right? But one thing they discovered, because they're like, because, AIs tend to hallucinate, is that when it comes to these AIs, it's like, they completely underestimated how much engineers, how to actually lift up. Like, you're given a set of requirements to design a product or whatever. Like, how much heavy lifting through soft skills, engineers actually do for project managers that's not attributed to their skill set to actually deliver a meaningful product to the project manager specifications just because of their atechnical dipshittery, okay? Because they don't know what they're talking about. And so the fact is, how much heavy lifting is done by, engineers, having soft skills to interpret the requirements that are handed down to them by these dipshits, right? They just wave their finger and be like, make it, They were hoping that AI was going to be the magic tool that's going to allow them to finger wag things into existence. Turned out that wasn't the case, because the fact that maybe they just didn't know what they were talking about, and so there's some logical contradiction in what they're asking for the AI to implement. And so it just, completely shits out. Nobody knows why, and they just give up in frustration. But, like, how much heavy lifting is done by the interpretive, social skills that engineers have to understand the requirements of whatever a project manager is asking from an engineering team, right? They never give credit for that, but that's becoming on full display, is because the fact is, it's like, you know, all this vibe coding stuff turned out to be nonsense. They actually need to have some tactical skill to understand what they were designing, and it wasn't like a free lunch for these project managers as much as they would have hoped it would have been. So, you know, it's been funny watching that, because, like, you know, the senior engineering hiring rates are going higher is because the fact is now they're pulling. I think they're pulling back senior engineers and bringing them back on board is because, you know, they need them to actually maintain products. See, here's the problem. This is the junior senior engineer problem within the field. Okay, I already said engineering is a very experience heavy field, right? The thing is that there's a senior pool of people that they want to tap into, is because they can contribute immediately value right away. Okay, like, you know, now that you've become more experienced, you know how to use various different like tool sets or like embedded systems or whatever, right? You know, you can be brought up on a team and you can start contributing value and start working on tasks like immediately upon being hired at a company, right? A junior engineer, it takes like 6 months, a year or something like that to bring somebody up to speed on something, right? As a senior engineer, you can be brought up to speed much faster, okay? And so the thing is companies realizing AI wasn't replacing the senior engineers. Now they're doubling up the senior engineers. And I think the junior engineer roles are going to come up more, is because the fact is it's just going to be too expensive to pay the senior engineers thing. That's my hot take. And I told them that as well with the job market. So NVIDIA drivers are vibe coded and they're breaking computers. Absolutely. This is kernel level code. I'm not surprised by that. Wasn't COBOL and SQL supposed to give managers the ability to code without engineers? Now you're noticing the pattern, Hank. You're noticing the common pattern that these dipshits never like to talk about, okay? You know what was also supposed to give people the ability to code without having to code? Compilers. They were supposed to make it easy to code things in human-readable languages like C and C++. Yeah, you're probably saying, like, Alistair, C and C++ aren't human-readable like languages. They're low-level hardware languages. Well, at the time when they were made, when these compile-time languages were made, they were supposed to abstract over fucking punch cards, dude. And that's a lot more readable than assembly code or even punch cards, right? But the thing is like, they say this stuff all the dang time. You know, and of course I could probably say that, like, you know, the logical structures are more important than the actual language details themselves, but neither here nor there. They've been saying this every step of the way. Do I think it's going to advance coding and allow people to make more scalable projects? Yes, but these companies have not figured out how to meaningfully implement it into their workflows to actually deliver products, you know, at all. That's until you have to design system designers forget how to code fundamentally, and that can happen, you know, so... Tech Bros thought AI was the Mjolnir that ended up being the tack hammer from the Harbor Freight. Yeah, that's why I'm not too terribly afraid of, like, these companies. Is because, like, the thing is, they shot their load, they fucked up, and now they're basically dealing with the consequences. So, let's go on down here. What's over here? Let's go to the desert location that is... Okay, that's really south. So it's that way. Let's go south, guys. Total HR death. Unironically, HR is going bye-bye is because, you know, here's the funny part. This is why I know HR is going to go bye-bye. And this is going to be a hot fucking take, okay? HR is going to go bye-bye. It's ironic that they said that it would never replace roles like HR and, like, blue-collar workers, like these fucking dipshit tech CEOs were celebrating with joy about that, right? But Palantir is literally a living example of the opposite of that, right? You know, if the thing is, they say it's not good at soft skills on, like, you know, large amounts of data to surveil on people. That's all soft skill data. That's all these dossier databases are with Palantir, okay? And if it's going to be able to do that and form entire dossiers on people, which they can basically use to surveil people, like, that's HR's essential job, is to gauge through soft skills what somebody's capabilities are. Like, you know, so is it really going to go after the engineers, or is it going to go after the HR people who are going to be automated ways, because an AI is going to be more fair about judging somebody's capabilities than an HR person who's just going to not hire you is because you don't fit with, like, the team flow or some shit like that, right? Senior engineers want to retire. AI has reached its cap and has become a glorified search engine. Yeah, they can't code into tech. Yeah, junior engineers are coming back. Oh, it's inevitable. It's because, again, it's like, you know, they were banking on AIs replacing senior engineers. That turned out not to be the case. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doubling up hiring for senior engineers. So they're basically trying to... So the reason why they're hiring senior engineers first is because they're basically trying to rebuild their engineering teams. You know, but they need the senior engineers to basically be the ones to do that. And so just give it some amount of time. I think tech's going to actually probably come back to some degree. You know, that's my hot take. I think just give it a little bit of time and you're just going to basically come back to, you know, tech, you know, being... I'm not going to say it's going to return back to the original state, is because the fact is there's tons of jobs in the United States that have been liquidated is because the rent-seeking parasites just made everything more expensive. But I don't think tech or STEM work is going to go away. HR works to protect the company. They might keep the lawyers, but so do the lawyers. Those are payroll lawyers, but, you know... I'm a physics professor. Oh, dude, hell yeah, dude, physics professor in the chat. You know, I wanted to do a PhD in physics, and I probably will eventually at one point or another, but it's like, you know, physics has always been like a big, you know, thing I've enjoyed. You know, but the unfortunate part is at the time, there was not a lot of money, and all the money was engineering. And then, you know, COVID happened, and then AI happened, and they downsized on engineering. So it's like, I've even told myself, maybe I should just go back to grad school to get a physics PhD, is because, like, neither engineering or physics pays well. So you might as well do what you like. The inevitable LinkedIn seething when HR goes the way of the dinosaur will be glorious. I think that's inevitable. Because, like, you know, all the metrics show that, you know, AI is really good at, you know, measuring somebody's capabilities to some degree. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but the thing is that, like, all those supposed soft skills that they said, you know, AI was not going to be able to replace. Like, Palantir as a company is a living example of the opposite of that. Being able to get information and form, like, you know, rep sheets off of somebody, and it'll probably be, like, much more fair. Physics majors speak, I listen. Yeah, no, I like listening to that as well. You know, I try to talk about physics every once in a while, maybe go on the bit of the schizo side, because it's essentially this is like more of a politics channel, but not too terribly much, because like, you try to stay on topic with this stuff. But yeah, I think it's going to turn out better, you know. I can't complain. The job search has been going pretty well for me. I get the sentiment, but the engineering perspective. But do you think that what do you think of the artist perspective? AI bros want to beat artists over the head for some reason. That's always so stupid to me, is because like artists are like, you know, why go after artists? It's like they actually make something that is nice to civilization too. And plus, artists were already suffering before like the AI anyway, so it's like, you're just being sadistic if you're going after artists on this one. The thing is here's the tough part about artists, and this is one of the things that might be tough about artists, because I didn't realize they're kind of like web dev roles, okay? You know, CRUD apps, you know, that was a big thing for a lot of computer science people, and those got automated away fairly easily, is because of the fact is AI is really good at typing those things. With art, you know, a lot of art majors where they could basically earn an income was built off of, you know, marketing art. So the thing is that, like, with marketing teams need artists to actually draw their art and stuff like that. So I have a buddy who worked in marketing for years, and that field essentially got liquidated overnight, is because companies just went to the cheaper option of going to ChatGPT to generate their like corporate art instead. So like, it's hard to say. I don't think art is ever going to be fully, like, you know, automated away in a degree, but like a lot of the bullshit jobs, like, you know, even for like computer science, like CRUD apps or something like that, got automated away. Yeah, I think this is the desert zone. You know, it's going to be sucks, because that was a huge section of jobs that are just basically getting like automated away to a large degree. So it's unfortunate, but I don't think it's going to replace all artists, but it is going to cause a downsize, just like it did with computer science. That's my honest take. Okay, I'm not... There we go. I can get that fang from it. Okay. Yeah. Artists are no longer taking the poor paychecks anymore. Dude, artists have always been starving, even before AI, which is kind of the shitty thing, is because I don't think people should disrespect the arts, is because the fact is, it's like, that's what actually makes things fun in civilization. As much as I am like a STEM elitist, okay? The arts are very important, you know? And so honestly, it's like, if we had see, unironically, artists would probably do best if there's a universal basic income to kind of pursue their own passions. But it's kind of tragic. My PhD was in quantum walks using Bose-Einstein condensates. I love physics, and yeah, it may not pay as well as the other fields that I could have gone into, but I'm happy with life. That's the important part. I just hate the crazy system we're in. Yeah, same, dude. Absolutely. I enjoy it. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, you know, anybody who studies physics is obviously not doing it for the money. It's because they have the passion in it. And I had the passion for it, but I was like, I went into engineering because I was told that's where the money was at, and it turned out there was no money in there either. So look where I'm at. So, but this system is absolutely fucking awful that we're in. Let's see. See if we can find some thorium in these caves, because that's what's gonna advance us a little bit. Not touch that explosive mushroom. Just kill us. The chat is very interesting. It's full of all kinds of people: commies, NSs, National Socialists, Duganists. Oh yeah, dude, I love how like mixed our audience is, because it makes for a good discussion. Even if I might not disagree or agree with everything, with different perspectives and stuff like that, you know, it's still good to have like different perspectives. But it is amazing that people are kind of just being brought together over the cost of living crisis. What's up, Al? How you doing, man? As he says with the Griffith avatar, art is a good pastime. Yeah, I know. It's kind of hypocritical. Like, I use AI, you know, for the little personas because I'm lazy. But the thing is, when I did, like, the AI persona, you know, kind of thing, it's because, like, it was when I was still, like, 500 subs or something like that. And then just kind of got bigger. So I might actually, like, payroll an artist, be like, hey, you want to make art for me? And maybe make, like, a actual VTuber model or something like that. That one guy reached out to me and asked me if, like, I would hire them. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll pay you. I have no problem with that. Because, like, getting a fully animated, like, PNG tuber model would be pretty sick, and AI is not going to take that. So it's like, you know, I told them, it's like, be willing to pay you and stuff like that. It's like, why not? Because now the channel's grown a bit. It's like, and it's having success. It's having a pretty consistent audience. It's like, at that point, it's like, okay, maybe I can payroll an artist. So Even as a third worldist, I greatly respect you and your content and willingness to hear the other side. I'm glad. Yeah, and that's kind of the funny part. It's like, even when I talk about third worldists, it's like, I don't really have a beef with your guys' side of the world. It's just like, the thing is, there's a level of, like, faux third worldists that are just using it to antagonize American workers. And the unfortunate part is that makes American workers more racist, which is fucking stupid anyways. But yeah, I'm glad you're a part of the chat and part of the discussion. So, like, whenever I'm talking about third worldists, don't take it personally, man. Because I don't have any particular beef. Like, you know, honestly, the best thing that's going on for the third world is that they get to go their own way. And, like, China's actually giving people an alternative in the third world from the United States and Europe, which probably would be the best thing anyways. Because, you know, these unilateral, one-sided trade agreements that the United States is engaged in with the rest of the world is not exactly, like, helpful for the third world as much as people pretend it is. So, what is necessary for society? I gotta fix the cost of living before touching UBI. The amount of times I heard boomers say they want to increase rent by the same amount of UBI. Oh, it's very common, dude. We're gonna take boomers' properties if they just don't stop running their mouths, because boomers are absolutely fucking insufferable. It's like, no, boomers. It's like, tell you what, boomers, I'll make a deal with you, okay? And this is from the great Alistarian regime. This is from the green hat regime, okay? You know, boomers, this is our offer to you, and this is gonna be our final offer before we take all your properties, okay? You get to keep your Social Security, you get to keep your Medicare, and you get to choose whatever property amongst your ranks is your favorite. Your biggest, smallest, whatever you choose, right? But all the other ones, you're going to sell them off at an affordable price to a young family so they can settle down and have a family in the first place, right? So, yeah, no, boomers will 100% just rent seek if you just pass UBI. UBI by itself is not actually a solution. Art is necessary for society to be able to manifest its philosophy and values in the physical world. I don't think corporate tech bros understand deeper concepts like that. That's the STEM elitism I was never really a fan of, is because art's still very important to civilization, and people like to pretend it's not. I wasn't knocking on you. Both STEM and art have good appreciations. That's fair. By the way, Alistair, my profile pic is a bifurcation from the Chua Chaos Circus. Oh, I see the chaos. Okay, so you basically have, like, chaos, that little chaos graph. You know, I know what you're talking about. I love it. It's very pretty. That's what I work with nowadays, and I teach at a small university. There you go, man. That's a cozy job. Teaching at a university. It's not too terribly bad. I don't mind teaching, but it's not my favorite thing. I'd rather work professionally. I do enjoy working as an engineer. Fun fact, as much as I complain about engineering pay, I actually enjoy working as an engineer. I like building things. In fact, I can't even complain about my current role right now, is because of the fact that I'm working on stuff that I actually enjoy. So it's like, you know, it's great. You know, is the pay a little bit lackluster? Yeah, it is what it is, but who cares? Everybody's poor these days. Billionaires will replace workers and destroy cultures, then LARP as racist online. Oh yeah, you gotta love it, dude. Billionaires, they always gotta put on that little quirky face mask to pretend that they're not something, or pretend that they're something. This is why you just can't, like, just being anti-rich person is probably gonna be the future, and they're gonna get really upset about that. My fellow wages, you know, I too hate black people. Yeah, it's so pathetic. Oh, by the way, Mokutan from the server. I need to get around to seeing the American Railways video. Logistics and redundant supply chains is my big interest. Hell yeah. I'm going to be trying to make more long-form content. Hopefully with some stability. I actually want to make more videos talking about public transportation and infrastructures, because I have my own autistic takes. Like I said at the beginning of the stream, that I'd love to make some dedicated video essays or videos on, because I've been doing a bunch of brainstorming with Matt, talking about stop points and travel speeds. So I do have that down the pipeline. It's just the thing is that, like, you know, I have very limited time on the weekend, and I would love to push out more content, but at the same time, it's like, this is the kind of thing, you just have to be patient with me, because I work full-time as an engineer, and so the thing is like, content creation is definitely like a side gig for me. And unfortunately, it's not something I plan on turning into like a full-time profession unless I really have to. Like, I like working as an engineer, I like building things, but at the same time, it's like, you know, at the same time, it's like the cost of living crisis is an unbearable thing. Why don't people start working cooperatives? It'd be fastest way to get rid of bosses talking about taking all the profits. The problem is investment capital. How do you get access to business loans to do that? So that there's always going to be that as a problem, as a risk. So some companies do actually start out as worker cooperatives, and sometimes they succeed or sometimes they flop. Every AI image is just some artist's work online. It's not you, it's just someone else's. I agree. I agree that it's a horrible tendency of third worldists. American workers are not the enemy. Many of them love even. Oh, dude, absolutely, dude. Unironically, if you just told the policies to people, and just didn't mention the name, they'd be like, wow, I actually agree with this guy, you know? And that's kind of thing. It's like, so superficially attacking American workers as much as it... If you want to attack boomers because they were a part of the enfranchised American empire, I could 100% understand that. But the younger generations, you know, especially the younger working classes, they literally have no stake in the system. So antagonizing them is just going to make them racist. So that's exactly the way I see it, is because the fact is, like, you can antagonize boomers. The reason why less than 3% of boomers have ever considered communism is because if you have 9 Airbnb rentals, why would you ever consider the ideas of Mao Zedong and liquidating landlords? Because they benefit from the system. The younger generations do not, to some degree, to a large degree for that matter. You actually need hierarchy to make a business work. Everyone owning the business would just bog down. See, the thing is, you could have a process where you basically have a culture that elects the most competent person in the group. But the thing is, that requires a conscious effort to elect a person that's most competent in the group. And the thing is that like, if you don't have that, you just basically get the demagoguery and popular dynamics you get in every liberal democracy that just acts as basically a glorified distraction from any real or substantive issues. So the thing is, it's a balance on that regard, you know. It can work, but people have to have a culture and consciousness to recognize like what actually makes things effective. Because like you're always going to have hierarchy to some degree. Some people are just going to be more competent than others, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just because somebody is better than you at something doesn't necessarily make you inferior as a human being. And that's the thing I try to point out the most when I say I'm an elitist in a sort of sense. It's not that, you know, I view people who are not good at engineering or STEM or whatever as lesser than me. But the fact is some people are more skilled in some things than others. I can't draw to save my fucking life, for that matter. That's why I'm using an AI rant Sona on the internet. So the thing is that, like, you know, people have different skills and are better than other people at certain skills. It doesn't necessarily make the other person necessarily inherently inferior. It just means that they're just not good at some things. Maybe they just didn't spend time in it, or they're just not talented. Who cares? It's like, do you call your doctor an evil elitist? Is your doctor somehow like a superior person because he knows more medical knowledge than you and you're just inherently inferior? That's retarded. So that's my point. Let's go find some more thorium. From the physics side of things, one of the things that angered me began with maybe dislike the system is how many theoretical physics graduates have to go into insurance industry and back. Oh, dude, you know, math PhDs and physics PhDs going into finance is probably one of the greatest tragedies of underutilization of intellectual capital, if you want to call it that. So, what if a violinist has the right not to know how to code C++ or 20? Yeah, that's totally fair. They have the right to do this because they're a violinist. Why would they care about C++? I don't expect them to know C++. It's like a different industry. So, I mean, if you want to be a violinist and somebody who knows how to use C++, that's totally fine too. That's on your own prerogative. But that, you know. Alrighty. Let's see. I'm not finding any more thorium. Due to. I have a professorship job. Feels like a massive waste of talent. It is. It's a huge waste of talent. Absolutely. I'm trying to find some more thorium. I only got like 16, but I want to get loaded up on this stuff, but I'm not finding it. It's quite scarce. And I'm currently in the desert zone. Let's go down deeper. At one point or another, it just turns into lava, and it's just a waste of time. Okay, let's go down here. I'm finding iron, but no thorium. This is just cringe. I need the green, like, element, so I can... There it is. There's some thorium. Sweet. See, the cobalt is in the winter biomes. The thorium is in the desert biomes. I wonder, let me check that. Can I go into, because it didn't give me any warning about going into there. Okay, let's see if we can go to the winter biome and not get killed, okay? Like, that's going to be a fun one. We can go down there, but it's not really worth that much. There's more. Did I see some thorium? Oh, yeah, it's right there. The desert. Find some yellow cake instead. You mean, yeah, uranium-238 primarily, and then get like a centrifuge going on and separating it to U-235. That's how to end up on a watch list at the speed of light. Oh, there's some thorium. Sweet. Let's see if we can go to the snow biome and not get killed by tigers and shit. I want to see that. Okay, you guys get to watch me get, like, fucking absolutely annihilated by, like, a bunch of angry snow tigers if I go to the snow biome. And then Alistair's gonna have to withhold from saying gamer words on the live stream on YouTube to get his channel muted for, like, a week. Okay, let's figure out how to get out of this cave, and then we're gonna go to the snow biome so we can get some cobalt, because I'm curious, because, like, the thing is I was playing this one modded version of Hytale, and they had this weird leveling system where if you went to, the snow biome, you just get killed by, like, these stupid snow deer. It was so retarded. And then the swamp, there was this, like, really weird creature that just starts, like, making, like, bizarre, like, Australian noises, and it just, like, kills you instantly. It's so retarded. So, let's see this. Okay, we got up here. think that's just like that. It's a little red cave. Oh, that's the lava pit. I want to jump in that. Quick way to die on that one. Oh, dude, I wish I knew how to leech off the top. But the thing is, they literally designed the entire system to leech off of every single one of us, so we remain poor and like wage cucks our entire lives. So they've got it down to a T on how to basically make everybody else poor. So we're kind of stuck here until we basically light a fire under their ass. Because even Larry Fink was basically talking about like nuclear fission power. As long as we keep lighting a fire under their ass and getting our talking points across, like, we're gonna be golden. You know, just keep talking about it, spread the ideas, basically just point out the obvious part. And they're going to get pissed. They're going to give you the little, like, you know, crunched up, you know, milk-curdled face. That's your typical reactionary. And then, you know, they're going to get upset that you just mentioned the truth. Like, how dare you say the obvious? Just keep doing that. And, you know, eventually, like, they'll be forced to contend with ideas, different ideas. That's the secret. Okay, I think this is the way out of the cave. And then we're going to go to the cobalt area. We're going to see if we can totally not get destroyed by, yeah, there's a lizard. Okay, I need you. Okay. Custer, do you think AI is a serious threat to writers like media paints it out to be? Oh, absolutely fucking not. Writers, hell no, okay? Maybe, like, automating some things in dialogue options on, like, intermediate tasks, but, like, something like creative writing, oh, fuck no. No, that's retarded. Like, if you told me that it's gonna take all the writers' jobs, like, you know, no. Sorry, I would not, like, you would have to convince me that an AI is capable of writing, like, a heartfelt story that's actually, like, you know, like, I don't know, something like Planet or whatever. Yeah, good luck with that, dude. Oh, and these guys. Yeah, no, good luck with that one, dude. You can't convince me, like, any possible way that that's going to be a possibility. Yeah, we're going to replace the writers with AI. Good luck with that. People would spot it right away. Imagine a script written by AI, dude. It would just be like, you know, would you like some more information on how to further refine your story? And they just add that into the script and propose that. Oh my god, that's funny. I think the average person deserves slop. Slop AI. Well, the funny part about normies is they don't like slop. They like actual original stories. But the thing is the average normie is not capable of actually conjuring a story. See, the thing is, like, I remember when I made my, you know, what it takes to reindustrialize America video, a lot of people were caught off by guard. You know, they joined the audience because they like, oh, this person's talking about unique ideas. I've never seen some channel talk about, like, policy points on how to reorganize society in a positive way and stuff like that, right? And so it was a surprise to the people who came to the audience and stuff like that. And so people found it interesting. They found the channel interesting is because of the fact there's ideas they had not seen before. The average person doesn't know what they want. I'm kind of quoting Steve Jobs on this one. And I know Steve Jobs isn't the greatest person or whatever, right? But the average person doesn't know what they want until they actually have it till after the fact. Because after the video, and it had some success, and a lot of people were talking about, they're like, Alistair, you need to make more videos talking about policies for the United States, which I'm gonna do. Like, I still do from time to time. In fact, that last stream with the American Rail Club was intended to be that. But the thing is that most people don't know what they want, you know, and so the fact is they like novelty, and so they don't really know how to describe what they want, is because a lot of the times they like to see new things that they haven't seen before, that they get caught them off guard. So, you know, with the whole slop thing, people fall into slop because they're telling themselves that they like something like this, and it's not actually the case. They just go there because that's what they're used to. Okay. Okay. Need to... I'm getting turbo destroyed around here. Why are there so many mobs here? Try not to get destroyed. That guy will kill me. I'm just not ranked up properly. Yeah, whatever. I guess chasing me around. Get on the shores so we can avoid these people. So, most people are going to follow slop. Like, look at the Marvel stuff, right? When people say, I want something like X, you just get endless Marvel movies remade for the 7th time with, you know, infinite 70s music, you know, being used in the battle scenes like it's cool or some shit, you know? So, you got to stop listening to normies and take an ounce of creativity. Because, like, look at the Backrooms movie and Obsession, right? You know, directed by Gen Z directors and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it hits the box office because, like, the normie was, like, you know, blasted with novelty for the first time in decades. You're like, oh my god, I found something I didn't know I liked. And so that's what we need to do. We need more novelty, different ideas. And that's why I say, like, people shouldn't shit on artists, is because the fact is, if you let the corporate, you know, suits, like, fucking decide, like, what gets made and what does not get made or whatever, right? You're going to get remade slop content because it's a safe investment for the business card. They know that they can throw money into CGI, action scenes, and fucking voice actors and actors in general because it's a safe investment and it'll pay for itself, right? But then you get the infinite slop where it's like, oh, we're just going to remake the same, you know, Marvel movie 7 times and play 70s music for each remake and then act like it's new. Like, episode 7 for Star Wars was literally just episode 4 remade with, you know, that was just a nostalgia milking campaign. Like, I don't want that. I want novelty. And I think most people want novelty. It's just the thing is people don't want to take the risk and they don't want to try new ideas. So I don't know about the situation in Albania, man. I'm not aware of it. In fact, in the Juche book, they said intelligence is showed by the creativity of the person, not the IQ test. IQ is overrated, in my opinion. You know, I think a lot of the anti-intelligence stuff nowadays and why people are kind of just taking it out against STEM workers is because they bought into the IQ meme as like, it's just like a defiant oppositionalist stuff, like the whole IQ talking points of like the last decade. They were like, well, you know, you might be high in IQ, but I'm high in EQ. And they'd kind of use that as like their defiant oppositionalist cope because they didn't like IQ, but they still subconsciously believe in IQ. I don't personally believe in IQ. I think it's fucking retarded. But they still believe in IQ. They just go about it like hating it in like a cope way. It's like a defiant oppositionalist way. So, if you don't mind, normies forget that Star Wars was an indie movie. Yeah, normies always do. But then they just like recycle the same, like you know, they think they like, yeah, no, Star Wars was a risk investment. A lot of people, even George Lucas, thought the original Star Wars movie was going to be a flop. You know? So it's stuff like that that people take the risk and go against the grain. This is why I say it's like I'm an individualist at the end of the day, is because people going against the grain that are not going for the safe investments, taking risks to new things, actually do contribute things in their own way. So where's that snow biome? I think it was up north. We're not going in the lava biome. We'll probably get destroyed on that one. So we're going to go north. What do you think of Asmongold? I don't know. I don't really watch a lot of his content. You know, I watch some of it, but it's like, you know, it's there. It's not my favorite. Some people hate him, some people love him. I don't really have an opinion on Asmongold. He's one of the people that'd be like, yeah, you know, I just don't have much of an opinion. Mixed, maybe? The problem with public schools, in my opinion, is that they really don't teach people how to think, especially critically. Not to knock teachers because that's from higher up. No, I agree. That's always been a problem. They've always been like, teaching people to think critically is something that somebody has to like go out of their way to learn. That's kind of the tough part, you know. The first Star Wars movies had a lot of painting on plexiglass too. Public schools is more of a daycare, but sometimes you meet cool people and meet neat teachers. He is a golem. I mean, I always made the joke about like Asmongold. It's like he looks like Cyrax. He's like, you know, Cyrax is Asmongold's retarded little brother or something like that. You know, if you guys know who Cyrax is, he's like some major lolcow on the internet or whatever, right? He just looks like Cyrax's retarded little brother. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. It's like they got even the same hairline, dude. It's like that kind of goofy-ass look. Okay. Let's see if we can make an impasse to the north. See, okay, yep, there it is. There's the ice zone. Okay. And we're gonna go to the ice zone and hopefully not get literally fucking obliterated and raped by, like, ice tigers or some shit like that. I'm gonna drop this shit off because I don't want to lose it. Oh yeah, the best Star Wars movies are gonna come out, like, on YouTube because the fact is it's made by people who actually like to, you know, take ideas and then, like, you know, have fun with them. You know, the fans always make better stuff than, like, whatever, like, the Hollywood execs come up with. They're just retarded. Gotta love how the liberal mindset is to blame AI Magen Alpha for the literacy crisis. Yeah, I don't understand how anyone is watching Star Wars anymore. I don't watch Star Wars personally, to be honest. I'm gonna put that in there. I'm gonna leave that there. What else is of important value that I can just, let's go ahead and convert that over. The Star Wars Expanded Universe is neat, and then Disney basically fucked that up. I'm gonna put that leather in here is because... And that... I'm gonna convert that. I don't even have a tanning HUD. What the heck? We're gonna put that right here. We're gonna put you... What the heck? Okay, how do I get out of first person mode? There we go. That was annoying. Wait, did I get tied somewhere? I'm being retarded. I'm being retarded, ain't I? Huh. Okay. Well, I guess I put it somewhere. Oh, they're going to the snow zone, and we're probably going to get destroyed by, like, snow bears. I think this is the most important shit that I want to keep there. Okay, let's go. We're trying it out, guys. Alright, we're marching to our death into the ice zone. Star Wars Zone, Cape crap. Dude, I'm not into the normie shit. I don't watch Star Wars. It's like, you know... I know, I will tell you that I am a bit of a nerd about the Lord of the Rings lore videos that's AI generated on the internet. Like the Fall of Numenor. Like, I could talk to you about AI lore videos for, like, Lord of the Rings, and I'll have fun with that one. Like, that, you want to talk about autism? Like, people talk about the Star Wars expanded universe. I go through the, like, Tolkien expanded universe because I'm a fucking nerd. That stuff was fun. Alright, we're still going north. Yes, we are. Okay, what's up, Antisocial? What's your question? I haven't watched Star Wars since Force Awakens. That's fair. The rent-seeking is what killed Hong Kong's potential semiconductor industry, or what could have been. Yeah, classic, dude. Every single fucking time. It's like rent-seeking. When you have infinite middlemen, like, it's like, you know, the funny part is, like, we all intuitively know rent-seeking is retarded. You ever seen that stupid meme that you see circulating on social media? It's like, you know, it's like 3 managers telling the person who's doing all the hard work to work harder, and it's just 3 people who are just basically telling... It's like, you know, 1 person's doing the actual work, but 3 people are just basically, like, wage whipping and shit like that. It's like, we all know that doesn't work. If everybody's working, things are better. But the thing is that, like, we have an entire civilization based on it. How come, you did a stream with the American Rail Group? Because we wanted to talk about infrastructure. That's about it. You know, we want to talk about public transportation and spurg out over autistic things like that. So... Why? Is there something I need to know about them? You know, because they left a comment on one of my, like, industrialization of America videos, and I figured we'd have a good discussion about, like, you know, industrial planning, but all he did was, like, kind of talk about the tiny hats. I'm like, yeah, we know about the tiny hats, man. Like, it's literally 2026. Everybody's talking about the tiny hats, dude. That's the only thing. Like, you know, you don't need to insult our intelligence. We know about the tiny hats, man. Okay, we're almost at the snow zone, guys. Problem is they think civilized nations have a responsibility to offer them amenities. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Well, the thing is, I like to alternate. Okay, so here's kind of the thing, Antisocial. I like to talk about infrastructure and all this sorts of stuff, but I also like to basically talk about things, kind of get people, like, I don't want to sound, this is going to sound a little bit, like, to rile people up. Like, you know, because the thing is, the crowd feels 2 feelings. Rage and fear. Okay, outrage and fear are the 2 emotions that a crowd feels. Okay, so to spur people up, I talk about the things that drive people up the wall, but then I also try to provide solutions to the problems that, you know, I basically elucidated in the first place. The cost of living crisis is outrageous, but then I also use that as a point to basically spread the ideas of talking about possible solutions to that problem. So that's the reason why I swap between the 2. Because sometimes I will literally just do, I don't want to say outrage content, but I'll tap into the discontentment of the masses, but at the same time, I'll try to propose solutions to that. You know, that's what I do. That's why I swap it up. And the thing is that, like, you know, that stream kept getting cut out, so that kind of destroyed the quality of the stream, which maybe I'll just make more videos on that topic in particular. The concept of rent is crazy. You should own your own thing after giving them out of money after years. Absolutely. Okay, so, let's see. This is the snow zone. Okay, let's try not to get absolutely fucking annihilated in this area. Probably going to get destroyed in this one, but we'll try it out. I appreciate it, Antisocial. What a pretty area. I've always liked, you know, Washington State's a very pretty state. It kind of reminds me of, like, the forest there. You know, the temperate rainforest. That's very pretty. Okay. This is where we're going to find cobalt. Yep. Oh, it's a polar bear. See? That's the snow bears that I'm talking about, man. Okay. If I get raped to death by this thing, it is what it is. What's up, Luigi Clippy? Living Wage Act for all was proposed recently, raising minimum wage to 25. Unironically, if you actually wanted to make minimum wage and like minimum wage should be $25 an hour because that would be at current inflation levels. Okay. Let's see if I can beat this guy. I'm probably going to lose, but we're going to try it out. There we go. Okay, that wasn't too terribly bad. Hey, maybe we can go to the lava zone and not get totally destroyed. Okay. Boreal Reach. Okay, so we actually made it. Nice. Okay. Oh, it's slippery. God dang. We're in the snow zone, guys, and we haven't been annihilated. We're in Canada. Well, now Canada's not even like this because of the extreme heat in summer. I agree. Everyone's talking about Davids these days. We know about them. Yeah, fair enough. Oh, there's not snakes out here. Okay, at least it ran away. There we go. Yeah. Let's see where we're at, guys. See my own chat. Oh, it's slippery. I oppose minimum wage hikers on the reason alone. It encourages corporate consolidation of the economy is because they can force everybody else to eat the cost. That's one of the reasons why it's like, you know, the right-wingers kind of have a point on that one. Okay, we're gonna go down here, see if we can find some cobalt. Let's see what's down here. Okay, and that was gonna hurt no matter what. Okay, let's see what's in the ice zone. Frozen caves. We got snow ice mushrooms. What are these things are lethal? Heck, probably not. Okay. What is this? Oh, it's grass? What's that moss? It's moss. Oh, okay. I don't know what the essence of ice does, but we'll figure it out as we go along. I make $16.50 an hour, just making it barely breaking each even month. Yeah, that's I believe it, dude. The thing is, even 15... See, the funny part is, with all this inflation going on, like, $15 an hour is effectively the new minimum wage just because of the cost of living crisis. You know, think about that. It's like, you know, people talk about minimum wage and raising it to, like, $15 an hour. It effectively already is $15 an hour, just because the fact is it's actually impossible to stage a worker and payroll them effectively just to get by. The means of bare subsistence for anything less. Think about that. That's how bad the cost of living crisis is that companies at $15 an hour is the new minimum wage, not by like any policy, but just by how unaffordable everything is. I think that might be cobalt. It is. Okay, cool. All right, we found some cobalt, guys. Let's take a look at this. Okay. There's a weird scaling with this game. So basically, this is the next one. I think the mithril's in the lava zones, but I'm going to be honest with you. I think I'm going to get destroyed if I go in the lava zones. I work double to maintain what I had before. Absolutely, dude, same. It's like, I can't... Like, engineering used to be the role where you would make good money if you know, worked hard in college and you were pretty much set for life, okay? Now it doesn't even afford the average house. That's how bad the cost of living crisis is. It's just getting at the speed of light. There we go. See if we can find some more cobalt in these ice caves. Okay. We totally didn't get annihilated going to the ice caves, so that's a plus. I think this is cobalt. Yeah, right here. I'm Bearman. Cut all expenses. Money is my only spent. Yeah, it's fucking terrible. That's why we all fucking come here to talk about things on Wage Rage Radio, is because the fact is we're all here because of the cost of living crisis. You know, everybody's dealt with the cost of living crisis, put on the green hat before. Gone full TPD, gone full Wage Rage. See, this is kind of the thing. It's like, because I work as a full-time engineer, like, the pay is okay. It's not great. It doesn't afford the average house. It's comfortable, but it doesn't afford the prestige that they used to have. I can't imagine how bad it is for everybody else that hasn't done, like, law, medicine, or STEM. Like, it must be fucking awful. So it's like, you know, just looking at that fact alone, it's like, even if the haters of this community want to scream like how I'm a moral hypocrite for talking about the cost of living crisis all day, that's not going to stop everybody else who's going to start coming to talk about the cost of living crisis. I don't think they realize, like, how much they screw the pooch. But, you know, screaming about little mom Donnie's popping up everywhere. When people stop being socialists, stop giving people reasons to be socialist, it's actually quite simple. There's a lot of people who are not even socialists because they want to be socialists, or that they agree with communism. They just don't like the wealthy at this point, because they're just hypocrites. I got it. Yeah, well, the thing is if you have to actually get a job to actually get by, or you need to have a job just to get by, yeah, you can talk on Wage Rage Radio. Unless you're part of the wealthy class, you know, you're kind of stuck here. Oh, there's a rat attacking me. So yeah, welcome to Wage Rage Radio. If you're in need and you can't get a job either, it's like you're stuck in the same situation. They use the unemployed as like the reserve army of labor to basically make people work harder for less. So yeah, no, it's okay. You're welcome to Wage Rage Radio. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this cave. So I got some thorium, or no, cobalt, which is more than enough, at least for now. Some ice blocks. I just realized I've been streaming for 2.5 hours. I might go ahead and cut off the stream at this point, is because, you know, it seems to me that it's like, you know, we've had a good discussion. We've talked a lot about great things, but I don't want to drag it on because now the day's kind of coming out. Plus, I kind of want to get on releasing some videos today, hopefully. But it's been a fun chat and a fun hangout session to basically wage rage about the cost of living crisis and talk about politics. You know, we're not going anywhere. The cost of living is getting worse, and housing is just getting more unaffordable, especially with the rate hikes. With that being said, if you enjoyed the stream, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in future videos.